All right, good evening. It is 6 o'clock. I'll call our meeting to order. And let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and welcome our friends from Blue Jacket Flint. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you all and welcome. I think this actually might be our biggest crowd yet, for sure. Would you please take a few minutes and come around to the podium and introduce yourselves, share a little bit maybe about who, if you're with Stuco or whatnot, or if you have a favorite meal from lunch, from school lunch, favorite class. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Alexander Lightborn. I am in Site Council. I'm in 6th grade. And my favorite subject is music, and my favorite thing from lunch is probably the strawberry milk.
Excellent.
Hello, I am in 6th grade. My name is Henry Allen. My favorite subject is math. I don't eat school lunch, but my favorite item is Crunchy Cheetos, and I hope this meeting goes well.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Ember Etchison. My favorite subject is music. I play the clarinet. And my favorite item from the school lunch is probably the mozzarella sticks or the cheeseburgers.
Hi, my name is Lydia Marcellus. I am in 6th grade. My favorite subject is music and math. I don't eat school lunch, but if I did, my favorite food would probably be the Cheetos.
Hello, my name is Coralie Wood, and I'm in 6th grade, and I'm in Site Council and Student Council. My favorite subject is math, and my favorite school lunch item is chocolate milk.
My name is Faye, and I'm in 4th grade. My favorite subject is math, and I don't eat school lunch, but if I did, I would probably do mozzarella sticks.
Hi, my name is Julia Guile. I'm in 4th grade. If I had to pick, I would probably pick the chicken sandwich.
Hi, my name is Juliet Salinas, and my favorite subject is math. I am in student council, and my favorite subject is math. And the one thing I like to eat from school lunch is probably the chicken sandwich, too.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Kim, and my favorite subject is math, and something I like from the school lunch is the French toast sticks.
My fave.
Hi, my name is Bailey Cassaw, and I'm in 3rd grade. And my favorite item from the school lunch is probably all of them.
Love it.
Hi, my name is Connor Cook. I'm in 6th grade, Site Council. My favorite thing on the lunch menu is the spicy chicken sandwich or the orange french fries.
Cheers.
Hi, my name is Ben Lopez. My favorite thing for lunch is probably the cheeseburger.
My name is Ryder Foster. I am part of student council. I do not eat the school lunch, but if I did, my favorite thing would probably be the French toast sticks.
Hi, my name is Callum Decker. I'm in 5th grade, and I only eat the school lunch once a week, but my favorite has to be the mac and cheese.
Hi, I'm Sedona Chung, and I'm in 5th grade. And I don't really have a favorite.
Hi, Hi, my name is Elise Hurla. I don't really eat school lunch, but if I had to choose one, it'd probably be the chocolate milk when it's not expired.
Oh,
Hi, my name is Amelia Alenko, and I'm from 5th grade, and my favorite thing is mozzarella sticks.
My name is Ian Pounds, and I'm in 3rd grade. My favorite subject is math, and my favorite lunch from school would probably be the French toast sticks.
Hi, my name is Silas Guile. I'm in 3rd grade, and I'm in student council. If I had to pick a lunch food, I'd probably pick the apple juice.
excellent. All right. You all did a great job. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourselves and being here tonight. You make a world of difference kicking off our school board meetings. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda if there are no changes? Thank you. Second?
Second, Borgman.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries 7-0. We have 2 minutes items for approval, items 1.04 and 05. I'd like to do those together. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval, Hembry.
All right, second?
Second, Garcia.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Dr. Hubbard, can you lead us with the superintendent report? Item
Absolutely, thank you. We are excited to share that Shawnee Mission East, Shawnee Mission North, Shawnee Mission Northwest, Shawnee Mission South, and Shawnee Mission West are all ranked in the U.S. News and World Report list of best high schools in the United States. Shawnee Mission East was ranked number 3 in the state of Kansas. These rankings are formed using data from nearly 25,000 high schools in the United States and Washington, D.C., and the factors in such items as performance on state assessment and how well the schools prepare students for college according to the publication. We congratulate all of these school communities for this incredible achievement. Speaking of achievements, we congratulate everyone on another wonderful Shawnee Mission Research and Development Forum. It was so inspiring to see all the projects in science, technology, engineering, arts, and career and technical education featured at the Student Showcase. We were so impressed by the innovation, problem-solving skills, and poise demonstrated by all of the competitors in the Next Great Idea competition. Congratulations to all who made the R&D Forum such a wonderful experience for our students and our community. I also want to thank the Rainier family for all their support over the years making this event possible, and a special thanks to Dr. Neal and the entire CNI team that worked tirelessly to make sure this was a great event. This month, we celebrate the conclusion of another great season of Read Across SMSD. In May, we're focusing on the people and the places that give us a sense of belonging. Let's take a look. As we wrap up another year of Read Across SMSD, we'll be exploring the places and people that give us a sense of home and belonging. There are thousands of us that travel to and from schools in Shawnee Mission every single day. It may be by bus, foot, car, bike, or even scooter. Each one of us has a unique journey. This month's featured elementary book is The Train Home by Donna Kim. Kim tells a similar kind of story. The main character thinks about all the places she could go, but eventually thinks about the deep connection to the people she loves back at home. I'm excited to be here with 3 students from Raymarsh Elementary who are going to tell us about the places and people they see as they travel through the day, helping them feel right at home, right here at Raymarsh Elementary School.
Every day I am so glad to see the school because it is a fun place to learn. On my way home from school on the bus, I see 2 hills that help me recognize that I am close to being in my neighborhood where I belong. As I go throughout my day, it always makes me feel happy to see other kids happy in school with their friends. When I walk in, I'm always surrounded by my best friends, and I love my school community. My favorite part of the day is walking into school and seeing all my classmates. I also really like math time, lunchtime, and PE.
Thank you, everyone. I am always so grateful when I have the chance to travel to schools in Shawnee Mission. Giving a smile or being friendly is something we can all do to help people feel a sense of belonging, no matter where they are in their journey. I love seeing shiny, smiling faces of teachers and students in the Shawnee Mission School District. Thinking of people in our community will always make me grateful to have been part of one Shawnee Mission. Let's read across SMSD. Thanks again to my friends at Ray Marsh Elementary School, to the NEA Shawnee Mission for their partnership, and the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation for providing access to Read Across SMSD books for all of our schools. I want to update you all on the latest episode of Shawnee Mission Mic'd Up. Episode 19 features the Shawnee Mission North NJROTC team, highlighting the team's successes this year, including national titles. We hope everyone gets a chance to hear us talk to Brooklyn Bonowitz, Shawnee Mission North Jr., and Chief Warrant Officer Dennis Grayless. You can always learn something from Coach Grayless. If you haven't listened, you should. We'll include a link in the recap that we will email to all staff and families to subscribe or download the episodes. We also have a brief strategic plan update. As of tonight, all action teams have completed their meetings. These teams met with the purpose of developing plans for all of the 6 drafted strategies and the updated plan developed by the Strategic Plan Steering Committee. Now that this work is complete, the next step will be for the action teams to present their work to the Steering Committee on June 6th. A finalized draft of the updated strategic plan serving the district from 2024 to 2029 is expected to be presented to the board for your consideration on June 24th. We appreciate everyone who has provided input to make this a successful process. At this time, I would love to invite the members of the Shawnee Tomorrow Group Class of 2024 who are here this evening to make a brief presentation.
I don't think I need the stool. Hi, everyone. We are representing the Shawnee Tomorrow Class of 2024 for the Leadership Program. Each of the Shawnee Tomorrow classes are tasked with coming up with a fundraiser, should they choose to do so. And our class was inspired after Education Day and hearing from Dr. Hubbard and the superintendent of the DeSoto district as well. We came up with the Grab the Tab and Snack Drive to raise money to pay off school lunch debt for the 3 Title I or close to Title I schools within the city of Shawnee, and also collect snacks for them as well. We hosted a snack drive at Hy-Vee and dropped off snacks to Broken Arrow, Neiman, and Shawano. And we are here today to present a check for $6,862.50 with another $500 to follow soon after, so that we can help erase the lunch debt for the kids so they can keep buying their chocolate milk and their French toast sticks.
Thank you so much, Erin. Let's not forget the strawberry milk because it is one of the absolute favorites. And to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Anybody interested? State Board of Education candidates?
Thanks again to all of you from the Shawnee Tomorrow Leadership class for supporting our kids. We are excited to celebrate high school commencements across the district next week. We will begin with Shawnee Mission East and Shawnee Mission South on May 20, Shawnee Mission North and West on the 21st, and Horizons and Northwest on the 22nd. Arrowhead is also planning a ceremony in the coming days. This is a wonderful time celebrating the culmination of so many years of work and student success. We will include a link in the recap with details for anyone who may want to watch the live streams of the ceremonies online. We're also excited later this week that Shawnee Mission will celebrate Project Search and post-high ceremonies, and in the coming weeks, students matriculating to new grade levels across the district. And last week officially marked Educator Appreciation Week, and our district thanked all who serve our students in a variety of ways. There were a couple of formal district events that marked the occasion. Early in the week, we hosted the Kansas Teacher of the Year recognition, honoring all teachers in Shawnee Mission who were nominated by their school communities as Teacher of the Year. We also celebrated Amber Pagan, pre-K teacher at Neiman Elementary, who is the Kansas Teacher of the Year finalist for the state of Kansas, and Annie Hassan, Arabic teacher at Shawnee Mission South, who represented our district at the secondary level. On May 9th, Shawnee Mission celebrated and thanked service pin recipients and retirees. These honorees represented so many years of dedication to the Shawnee Mission students. The retirees this year collectively have given more than 1,730 years of service to Shawnee Mission. We congratulate these individuals and thank them all for what they have done for our community. To wrap up Education Week, we want to share a video that includes some reflections from our students about the individuals who have helped them shine. We know their comments are representative of many in our schools.
Mrs. Reed is my favorite teacher. I love math and reading, and she teaches me math and reading.
I just have kind of a gift for being able to read fast. Like, I asked my teacher if I could, try and test for the SEED program, and I got in. Thank you, Mrs. Lambo, for helping me get into the gifted program.
We have a new band assistant director this year. Her name's Miss Beasley, and I think she's done an amazing job. As her first year, it's probably super hard, but she's already made a big impact.
Miss Miller, she's my French teacher this year, and last year she was my world language teacher, and she understands as a teenager what we go through and how we can have hard days.
Everybody's gonna say this, but Mr. Munoz, or Jose, he does so well at his job. He's the custodian, and he works so hard, and he goes beyond the limits of what you would expect.
One of my favorites is my journalism teacher, Ms. Tates. It's because of her that I know so much about the district and the opportunities that are offered. She was one of the recommenders for Leadership Shawnee Mission, and how that opened a lot of doors for me.
Mr. Bamberg, he usually makes my day better if it's going bad, and he always puts a smile on my face.
She makes me want to be here. She's really nice, and she makes me feel welcome too. So
I would say Dr. Van Zant or Mr. Lanier. I've taken a lot of their classes, and the style of how they teach and how they do it is what I enjoy about that class, because it's not like you're just sitting there typing away on a computer. You're working, you're thinking about an idea or something like that.
Just the care that everyone here has for our school is really amazing.
I'm really grateful for all of them, teachers and not teachers, just everybody in the building.
And that concludes my superintendent report.
Thank you for that. And thank you to the communications team for that great video. That was fun. All right. This brings us to the board report 2.2. And we'll start with Mr. Garcia with SMAC PTA, and then on to the Education Foundation if you have any updates to share.
Absolutely. Wanted to pass along in just a simple but very meaningful and heartfelt note from SMAC PTA. They wish Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Gilhouse the best of luck in their next chapter of life. Thank you for all your support over the years. It's been greatly appreciated. That's from SMAC PTA.
Okay, can I pause a second because I forgot something. I think we have a guest here tonight, Ms. Tash Davis, yes? Yeah. And Ms. Karen Wagner?
Thank you for this time. On behalf of SMAC PTA, it's my great honor, I'm probably going to cry, to present Dr. I'm so sorry. Superintendent Dr. Michelle Hubbard with the National PTA's Lifetime Achievement Award, which is the highest honor given from the nation's, the nation's largest child advocacy organization. Please forgive me. This award recognizes a person who lives out their commitment to children on a daily basis and tirelessly advocates for children's education, health, and well-being. Dr. Hubbard, your engagement with PTA leaders across the district has made a lasting impact. You've been instrumental in so many ways, not only working and engaging with PTAs, but also being inclusive and inviting of the value of PTA input. You've cast a positive light and been a strong leader in collaborating and working together for the benefit of our students. We'll never forget your comment constantly is this good for the kids? How's this going to affect the kids? We thank you deeply for your care, your guidance, and commitment to our kids. Your support of PTA has been unwavering. I personally want to thank you for always being open to lead a conversation or do a presentation at a moment's notice. We honor you with this honorary lifetime achievement for your extraordinary contributions, and thank you for your legacy and always putting our students and families first. And we wish you nothing but the absolute best. And I'm sorry I broke down.
Well, it's only been about 10 years since I've addressed the board. As a former Shawnee Mission Area Council PTA president, it is my honor to be here tonight to represent PTA once again and recognize my friend, Dr. Joe Gilhouse, with a National PTA Lifetime Achievement Award. Over 20 years ago, I met Dr. Gilhouse as a parent when my first child entered Shawnee Mission South. I told him at that time that I would be there for the next 12 years, and I looked forward to working with you. His reply was very simply, "Congratulations, I don't think I will make it that long." His straightforward answer, with a little bit of humor and a warm smile, is the Dr. Gilhouse we have all come to know. Tonight, we honor him with the National PTA Lifetime Achievement Award. This is the highest honor given to a person who daily lives out his or her commitment to children and acts as a tireless advocate for children's education, health, and well-being. PTA values collaboration, commitment, diversity, respect, accountability to make every child's potential a reality. During Dr. Gilhouse's tenure in the Shawnee Mission School District, I have observed his leadership using these qualities. Whether the topic was moving a staff from a traditional 7-hour schedule to a block schedule, or a hard-hitting question from a parent at a PTA meeting about a school dance, or, as they say, how they dance, he has led with collaboration, commitment, and with respect. His support of our students through more parent involvement, especially the fathers of our students. Many probably don't realize this, but Shawnee Mission South has had a very long-standing tradition of a fathers group that was started under his leadership and continues to this day. The other thing was, let's see, go back. His support of our students through more parent involvement, especially the fathers of our students, to the more recent expansion of middle school sports. He has made an impact on the student health and well-being of this district. Dr. Gilhouse, it has been a pleasure to work with you, work alongside you, and throughout all these years. We will miss you, but most importantly, your leadership will have a lasting impact on the students of this district. On behalf of the thousands of students, teachers, parents of this district, both past and present, I wish you a stellar retirement. It is well deserved.
All right, thank you both for making that special presentation. Congratulations to both of you. Well deserved. All right, Mr. Garcia, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that was better than that. My thank you that I read. Thanks for being here. The Shawnee Mission Education Foundation wanted to pass along some information. Last week during Educator Appreciation Week, the foundation asked the community to honor an educator with a gift to the foundation. The campaign was very successful, and it shows just how much our community, Shawnee Mission community specifically, loves our amazing teachers and staff. The staff and board of the foundation would like to thank our wonderful educators and all those who gave in their honor last week.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Borgman, do you have an update for
I
KSB
do.
Board of Directors?
Yep, thank you. Just an FYI, the summer leadership program that KSB hosts every summer will not happen this summer, just due to a lack of interest this year. So next year, if this is something that any of us want to participate in, we will talk about it well in advance to give us all time to plan. So our next meeting is June 15th in Topeka, and I will be sure to keep you all posted. Couple other quick updates. So I'm sure that we are going to hear more about this in the legislative report, but just from KSB, Senate Bill 387 is on the governor's desk. The KSB is advocating for members and just any public support and communicating the value of public education. The governor received the final draft of Senate Bill 387, which is the school funding bill, on Monday. She has 10 days to sign it, line item veto, or take any other necessary action. Otherwise, the bill will become law. Based on our analysis, it is likely the bill will be signed. Additionally, Kansas Executive Leadership Development System. This is actually really neat. Since July of last year, KSB has been collaborating with a group of superintendents, the Kansas State Department of Education, United School Administrators, Kansas State University, and researchers from the R12 Comprehensive Center to create a framework for developing superintendents at every stage of their careers. So kind of the bottom line is there is going to be a new system in place to provide developmental opportunities and executive level mentoring or coaching for all superintendents regardless of their career stage. So just some other, updates regarding personnel changes. If you are interested, feel free to ask me and I will fill you in, but that is the update. And again, our next meeting is in a month, and I'll be sure and let you know how that goes.
All right, thank you. Ms. Owsley, anything on Policy Review Committee? Where is that?
We have a meeting,
Yeah.
but we have not met
Okay.
since our last meeting.
All right. The Finance Facilities Committee did meet last week, or recently, and Ms. Hembry and I were in attendance, as were both our outgoing and incoming superintendents and deputy superintendents, so thank you all for participating. And Mr. Westbrook joined us in the gallery, and we reviewed, mostly talked about the non-operational budget presentation on the finance piece and an update on the bond and capital outlay expenditures, particularly summer projects coming up. All right, and then I believe that might conclude our reports. Is there anything else anyone wants to add? Okay. That brings us to item 2.3, the board financial report.
So attached, you'll find the board report as well as the SR3 year-to-date expenditure report ending effective April 30th. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions? This report's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, let's begin our discussion items. 3.1, our legislative update. I believe Dr. Little is here, yes? Welcome.
Thank you, good evening. Is this on?
I don't think so.
Can you hear me? The blue light's on.
Maybe it was on.
All right,
Just
is this
back
better? I'll pull it closer if that works better. Good evening, Stuart Little with Little Government Relations in Topeka. You've received a written report from us. The legislative session concluded, the regular session concluded, the wrap-up on the 29th into the 30th. So the legislature is done and gone. Theoretically, the process is done for this year, 2024. We've got on the table right now at this point 387, as Member Borgman described. The governor got it on the 6th. She has until the 16th to sign it or do whatever she's going to do to it. I think every expectation is that I think there were only 4 people in the legislature that voted against it. We supported it and encouraged our delegation to vote for it as well. So we don't anticipate any issues coming up from that bill. And I'm happy to go through the contents of that bill. It has the basics. It has for a 1 year only the funding, full funding of special education. It is only for 1 year. It has some changes that were in all the other funding. The whole budget for K-12 was all put in there. It has a couple of changes to some different policy areas. There are, I think, 7 or 8 policy bills in there, but at-risk programs, the legislature is going to continue to try to have oversight over at-risk programs. They've created a pilot project that every school district will have to adopt after 2 years that'll connect up at-risk spending to student achievement, and eventually, if you get down the road far enough, that will include reductions in funding if you don't meet the goals that are put in the statute. Those are in this bill. I think what I would note maybe a couple of other issues here, and that you may have heard that there's likely to be a special session if the governor does follow through and veto the tax bill that she has in front of her now. She could let it become law without her signature, and that means it would be done. If there is a veto of the tax bill, the governor can call a special session back in, and she has warned that she may do that. So we're likely to be back in the legislative session. They will be drawn back to do another tax package. She will have vetoed 3 by that point if this happens. Any other subject is available for action during that time period. I don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of interest in getting back into education issues, and I'll talk briefly about why here in a second. But they may come back, they may stay focused on tax. If they're here more than 3 days, all bets are off, and there may be anything under the sun talked about, and we may get back into these kinds of topics. The education bill, there's kind of nothing for us to do now. The bill is passed, but I feel like it's important to just take a moment and just talk about kind of what lays ahead of us now at this point. So this legislative session, those of you, we all have been following along over the last few years in the variety of topics and issues that have come up, and there have been pitched battles and vetoes and things that have failed. And this year there was essentially a pause in some of those challenging conflicts. There were some very aggressive bills. I came and talked at one point about losing accreditation, about losing your at-risk funds and those kind of things. But eventually everybody kind of narrowed back down into this bill, Senate Bill 387, which kind of unheard of, had only 4 people vote against it, I believe. So they shedded a bunch of issues that were controversial, frankly, because this is an election year. That doesn't mean any of those issues have gone away. Everybody wanted to have a process to get through, to have an education bill and get through the session. We're going to obviously have elections this fall, again in 2026 for a new governor. Long term, there are some benchmarks laid out here that we'll be watching going forward. Number one, the June 30th, 2027, the legislature, by that point, the school finance formula expires. So there are 2 legislative sessions and 2 summers to figure out what the new school finance formula will look like, what will be changed, what will not. The legislature in 387 created the Education Funding Task Force. They are going to they have the authority to propose to the legislature by the beginning of 2027 a new formula, changes to the formula, changes to policy, changes to funding, changes to revenue sources. All those things are going to be on the table. So what's going to be interesting is we'll have two legislative committees, the House Committee and the Senate Committee, who will continue their work in the policy area. And then those same folks that are leading that committee are most likely going to be the leadership appointed to run the formula committee. And so we will continue to go down that process, both through the legislature and through the interim process for the next 2 years, to put together what the new formula will look like. And that's going to shape every policy debate we have going forward. I mean, the policy is going to be policy, but anything that's connected up to the money and laying the groundwork for where we're going forward will happen in the next 2 years. We've gone through this cycle of processes, and it would be too much trauma maybe for me to go over some of the battles we've waged over the last 3 or 4 years, everything from funding cuts, the special education issues, from funding to policy, what's happened with at-risk and how we've built up the complexity of using dollars in different pools, the emphasis on achievement and conflicts between how there are folks that evaluate achievement in one way that is not necessarily how the State Board of Education scores achievement and those kinds of things. We've dealt with everything from the creation and expansion of the scholarship granting program to having very active live discussions in voucher programs. And so that's kind of what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years. So now lay kind of the topics over the nature of our process we're going to have for the next 4 years, interims, 2 sessions, and then in 2027, the legislature will show up and there will likely be lots of changes proposed to the formula. There will be a new governor in January of 2027. It's not going to be Governor Kelly. There'll be somebody new in there. And so there's going to be, we'll go through 2 election cycles. There may be change in the legislature, but there will also be a new governor there. It is important, I think, to keep in mind the last time the legislature wrote a school finance formula in 1992, finished it up in 1992. The battles, a lot of ways, the battles were about how do we pay for it. It was about balancing out rural and urban funding. It was about property taxes. How are we going to put together the funding scheme for this? That's where we got the local option budget and all of these components, and then kind of glammed on the special education formula from the 70s into the whole situation. And those were the big issues. There were coalitions between urbans and rurals to figure out how to keep small schools alive and fund large schools, and you came up with the LOB and those kind of things. That's not what we're going to go into this policy and funding debate talking about. We're going to have the conversations about at-risk, about special ed, about theoretically curriculum. We've had a lot of conversations about curriculum, where we may steer resources that. It's almost like the funding is kind of secondary to the policy issues that are laid out now in terms of what the new formula will look like. Everything will eventually come back down to money because that's how it always works. But I'm just kind of at this point, since there's nothing else to be done for this legislative session, we know what the policy is going to be. Those are the things that kind of lay ahead of us for the next 4 years. The Education Committee, the Education Formula Task Force will not have appointments made likely until November. That's the last time. So I don't expect a lot of work to be done on this year. So in general, everything is going to be condensed then over those next coming. They may have one meeting this year, but that's kind of the path that we're headed down. And I know that much more big picture than the specifics, but I think at this point, kind of pausing and looking at what's ahead, as I was thinking about what to come and talk to you all tonight, seemed of some significance. I'm happy to answer specific questions about 387, anything else that may be of interest.
I'm going to look up and down the road. Yes, Mr. Westbrook?
I, as always, enjoy your reports, and I compliment you on the way you're able to maneuver through those reports without giving us information we need without offending any of our lawmakers in Topeka, and I congratulate you on that. I wonder if it is time for us to be thinking about how we might be more proactive. It seems to me we go to Topeka every year in an effort to defend against things being taken away from us. And it strikes me that the education mechanism in the state, the superintendents, the school districts that we can form partnerships with, it's in our best interest, I think, to see if we can form stronger alliances so we can take a more proactive agenda to the lawmakers. And instead of being defensive about what they're trying to take away, go on the proactive stance to present a legislative agenda that is in everyone's interest. I know that's Pollyanna. I know that I'm speaking in a way that seems terribly naive, and I get the privilege of being naive as a newly elected school board member. But that notwithstanding, I would enjoy, and I think the rest of the board would enjoy, your counsel over the next several weeks and months on how we might formulate that kind of an agenda and seek the kind of alliance that we need with other school districts. I also think that sometimes we take for granted that we're on the defensive, when in fact there's a strong, strong commitment, I think, throughout the citizens of this state to really have a fine education program to attract families to come here, work here, live here, play here, stay here. And education is one of those great assets. And in states where that asset has been ignored, labor has declined in its quality, economic development has retreated, and things have not gone so well. So I just am giving a little bit of a pep talk to all of us to be on the offensive here, not in an insulting way, but in a strategic way. And I encourage you to be as imaginative and as inventive as you can, Dr. Little, because you are there, you see what's happening, you understand how the sausage is made. We want to make sure the sizzle of that sausage and the aroma it emits are attractive qualities to the agenda. So enough of my loquaciousness, but I just want you to feel like you are empowered to be aggressive on that front.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would like to just clarify one assumption around the 2027, this looming date around the school finance formula. The sole reason why this is being, am I correct in assuming the sole reason is that there is a sunset that was placed on it when the Gannon resolution was kind of working its way through. There is not necessarily anything wrong with it. It has been determined to be adequate and equitable by the state Supreme Court and all the evidence base that was reviewed in that. So it's not that there's anything wrong, it's just that a sunset got tagged on, and so it opens up the opportunity for what may be.
Yeah, you're correct. It was part of the negotiations, I think, between the House and the Senate when they were resolving kind of going forward with part of the Gannon solution. It set that date in there. The school finance formula does not have to change. There's no requirement. The legislature could simply remove the sunset and be done with it, and we would move forward with the system as is. I think what I was trying to suggest here was kind of the ground has shifted from where we were having conversations even 10 years ago, more nonetheless back to 92 when you put this formula together. And I think there could be small, manageable, constructive, useful changes, or it could be significant changes. Remember Westbrook's point in terms of what's available, what's possible. I think there's experiences that of regional work done by education advocates, of connections made to the community, particularly here in Johnson County, who were fairly actively engaged before and after the last school finance formula, to be part of that process to make sure that that the significance of public education in a county like Johnson County is important. And so I take the experience that we've seen to suggest that the formula is going to look different. There's going to be a push to make the formula look different than it is right now. Because every indication that I've seen and that I've brought to you is there are folks that are interested in changing it.
All right.
Dr. Little, I think that you've just given us a polite political analysis. And I think your forecast calls for what we're talking about here, to be more proactive. I have been approached by people in the business community and others who are very concerned about how we finance our schools and what signal that sends to the nation about the kind of economic development and family values we're trying to promote as a community, proud of our kids and wanting to do right by them. And so I just think we're approaching that moment where there's an intersection and we are going to cross it and go left or right, or maybe we can go forward with a really progressive galvanizing of our state community to get education on the right track going forward. I love your idea about simply saying, hey, there's nothing broken right now about the current formula. Let's just fund it more adequately so we're not holding our kids hostage to the concerns that some large businesses in Kansas have about the tax formula and how 50% of every dollar we spend goes to education. That's a pretty good thing, I think. I can't think of a greater value than education for our tax dollars.
A quick question.
Yep, Mr. Garcia.
You referenced, and I can't remember if you mentioned it prior to this meeting, but the Education Formula Task Force, who's that comprised of, or has that been established yet? Do you know who will be a part of that group or how they're chosen?
It is established in the law. It is comprised of 11 members, and then the 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate. The Speaker appoints a parent. The Senate President appoints a teacher. The State Board appoints 2 superintendents, 1 rural, 1 urban, and then the Department of Ed, the Children's Cabinet, the Budget Director, and the Special Ed Director are ex officio members of that body. And I didn't remember that. I brought the list. So.
I have a question too, and it might be a question for Michelle or Mary or others who are more involved, or Jamie, but sometimes issues like school funding can really feel partisan, but sometimes they can feel really geographically specific, right? Yep. You mentioned the requirement to have an urban superintendent versus a rural superintendent. And I acknowledge that we do a lot of our advocacy work through KASB, and I guess my question is sort of, to what extent are Shawnee Mission's interests aligned with KASB versus to what extent may we have our own, peculiar things that we're watching in terms of the funding formula conversation? My Pollyanna is saying KASB is going to do the work and we're all going to align behind one school funding formula that we're all going to jointly advocate for across the state, but that might be a little naive as well.
That's a loaded question.
Sorry.
Generally speaking, I think superintendents, regardless of our zip code, think that our current formula is pretty equitable. There are things that we don't always love about it, right? And then there are things like, for example, the COLA works great for us. At-risk weighting works great for Kansas City, Kansas, and Wichita. Low enrollment weighting or new facilities weighting that used to be there work great for some schools, not other schools. But I think overall, the general consensus of Kansas superintendents would be that we think the current formula works fairly well. Russ, is there anything you would add to that?
No.
Russ just wants more money. And I also think that most of us agree that school finance should not be based on a student's zip code. So it has to be equitable in some way.
Thank you.
Dr. Little, would you add to that or agree with that?
I would I would agree that the statement, and particularly shared among superintendents, that the education for a child should not be directed by their zip code. But there are a lot of people serving in the legislature that paying for that is a different conversation about how that will work.
I think one of the strengths, I think, of the Kansas school finance formula and the way that that has been vetted through the court processes is that it's There's a lot of checks and balances. We have a State Department of Education who establishes what our outcomes are going to be. We have local school districts who take part in how those goals and objectives are going to be achieved. And we have a cost function analysis. We have this kind of a very rigorous cost analysis that's been used over the last 20 years to define what those costs are of achieving those outcomes. And we have a state constitution that builds in a commitment to continuous improvement for our students. And I think all of those pieces together have really provided a lot of support and protection. It might have taken a while for us to get to adequate and equitable, but I think Kansas has some solid pieces in place legislatively and through our Constitution that should allow us to stay focused and moving forward. My personal opinion. Anything else? Dr. Little, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. All right, our next discussion item is 3.2 Student Discipline Update. Dr. Hubbard.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Grumman.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Sinclair and members of the board. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to share some updates on student behaviors as annotated through the student discipline system. I've also invited, and they're just going to stay in the audience for now, but joining us for some discussion later as needed are Kent Glazer, Director of Athletics and Activities, Dr. Lisa Grumman, Principal of Northwest High School, Dr. Chris Case, Principal at Hawker Grove Middle School, and Dr. Scott Sherman, who's the Director of Secondary Services, so they're available to provide some perspective at the end, too, as needed. Beginning with the strategic plan in mind, the ways in which we respond to student behaviors touches many aspects of student success and shares space in the conversation with respect to inclusive culture and an engaged community. Our ability to exhibit personal resilience and interpersonal skills are taught and learned directly and indirectly, and the data that we're going to review serves as a proxy for measuring these components in the strategic plan. As we venture into this conversation about student behaviors, we need to begin with an overview of our systems for responding for student behaviors that land below our expectations for ensuring safe and productive learning environments for all students. Our first line of response, long before we get to student discipline, is in proactively instructing students and modeling appropriate behaviors. However, just like with academic content, some students take longer to master expected behaviors than others. So this is where our systems for discipline come into the picture. Under the last strategic plan, or the one we're closing out of, the discipline matrix was rewritten to clarify the standard and standardize offenses and the range of actions related to each of those offenses. That work was completed around 2019, and the current discipline matrix was initially introduced in the 2019-2020 school year. You might recall that we had some interruptions in our learning environment between 2020 and 2022, which had a substantial impact on our data. So as we're looking at trend data under the new matrix, we really consider last year as our baseline year, and then this year would be their first opportunity for starting to review some trends over time. So we find we have some stability here. The goal of our system for responding to student behaviors is to work to ensure that we continue to foster to the greatest extent possible a positive environment for students to remain in class. To that extent, we want to make sure that our system provides the right guardrails for responding to student behaviors when they are not acceptable. This graphic illustrates this by highlighting the fact that discipline referrals and offenses fall on a continuum of severity levels. In the matrix, student behaviors are grouped into 4 levels, with level 1 being offenses that are minor and often handled at the classroom level, often where it's the teacher providing the actions and the students are not necessarily going to the office. And that goes all the way up to level 4 offenses being the most severe group. And then woven throughout the matrix are also opportunities for restorative justice and ongoing education when possible. And so that's why they're not just clean quadrants. There's some things that overlap in the picture as well. So this table shows the range, or a range of actions that may that administrators and teachers may use in relation to the offense levels in order of severity. For example, the least severe action is an informal conversation between the student and the staff member. Actions associated with the mid-range of offenses include some form of detention, a formal conference with staff to develop an intervention plan, and school suspension. And then the highest level of severity in our actions is long-term suspension and expulsion. And you'll see some letters in that second column, and those letters are associated with a range of actions that we've tied in with the referrals or offenses that you're going to see on the next set of slides. This graphic shows the group of behaviors associated with level 1 offenses and the range of available actions. So you can see from the matrix that a first-time offense has a range of at least several actions, but they range from A through D. That's what the pink area is for. And then more severe or repeated offenses is associated with the more severe actions, like that's where you see the E through K. So level 1 referrals include labels such as lack of respect, refusal to work, tardiness, and not following directives. Again, level 1 offenses are often handled within the classroom and don't necessarily need to be addressed by the administrative office. This table shows referrals associated with level 2 and their range of actions. Level 2 offenses include things like profane or obscene language, disruptions on the school bus, inappropriate public displays of affection, and disruptions of classes or activities. And the actions associated with the behaviors range from E to K, so there's that mid-range of actions for the first offense and then more severe actions available for multiple offenses. Suspension is included in the range of actions for level 2 offenses, but they are at the higher end of that severity scale. So there's many other actions that are available or in place in level 2 prior to reaching that suspension level. And then level 3 offenses include things like fighting, vandalism, hazing or harassment, possession of illegal substances, unjustified activation of the fire alarm. Many of the level 3 offenses have some legal ramifications where students may be referred to law enforcement. And as you can see from the matrix, the range of suggested actions or the range of actions available is also more severe. And finally, level 4 offenses are the most severe as they do have some legal considerations as well as concerns for the safety of other students and staff. Level 4 offenses include computer hacking, criminal threats, distribution of illegal substances, and significant property destruction. So I'll be referring to these levels in the data that follows. Before we move into some of these observations of our latest discipline data, please keep in mind that there are multiple ways to count discipline activities. So it gets really fun when we dig into the data, and I'm trying to, I'll be as brief as possible, but we'll have to explain as we're reading the graphs how we're counting the data. For example, we're going to be starting with discipline offenses. And so you might hear me use the word referral, this would be the same as an offense in this case. In some of these charts, we're counting offenses, and students can have multiple offenses, so students might be counted more than one time. In other charts, I might be counting students. For example, we might count students and their highest level of offense and skyward. So I use a couple different techniques as we go through the data. The same applies to discipline actions. Sometimes we'll count total actions, while other times we'll count individual students associated with one or more actions, such as when we are counting students who have one or more suspension. I have one graph where we're looking at total days of suspension, which might involve more than one action. I'm going to preload the conversation with a summary of what you're going to see in the next several slides. First of all, events leading to discipline, the most severe actions, the discipline hearings or an arrest, are extremely, extremely rare. On the other side of it, 74% of our students, and most of our data is looking at grades 5 through 12, but 74% of all students in grades 5 through 12 never see a discipline referral. Referral frequencies do vary by some student groups, with Black and free and reduced, ELL, and students with disabilities seeing a little bit higher frequencies compared to some other groups, and I'll show you that graph in a minute. 59% of all referrals or offenses are at level 1, and level 3s and 4s are much more rare. And when counting students by their highest level of referral severity, distributions by student groups do differ by some demographics. And again, we're going to follow through see some of that data. And we have also seen a reduction in the number of days or the average number of days of suspension when a suspension instance has occurred. So we'll be seeing that data as well. And then the third thing, the discipline matrix is working. Suspensions are strongly correlated with the severity of the offense as intended by the matrix, and the distributions of those are similar across student groups. So this graph shows a history of discipline hearings. Typically when students are in that level 4 range, sometimes repeated in level 3, but often in the level 4 range. So prior to the implementation of the current discipline matrix, we were seeing increases in the number of students going to a hearing. The highest you can see was into the 18-19 school year when we recorded 94 hearings. And then this year, as of here at the start of May so far, Mr. Glazer has had about approximately, let's see here, what's our number? 24 hearings as of May 6th this year. No, last year, there were a total of 24 hearings as of May 6th of last year. Mr. Glazer's only had to hold 35 hearings by the end of last week. So the implementation of the current discipline matrix, we've been able to keep the number of hearings below prior trends. Other statistics highlight how rare hearings actually occur in relation to the number of students that we serve. You know, you can see that 99.99% of all students never reach that level of hearing. So it's a pretty rare occurrence. And again, going with this theme of extremely rare events, the total number of arrests this year is extremely low, with 2 school-related arrests by the Overland Park Police Department and then 2 by our Shawnee Mission District Police. So very rare occurrence for us. Next, we're going to pivot back into those details in the discipline matrix, beginning with some data on referrals or offenses, which can be entered by any staff member in their respective buildings. Any staff member in a school can enter a referral or offense into the discipline system in Skyward. This slide shows the overall top 10 lists of referral entries from this school year. The number 1 referral is related to excessive tardies. This is closely followed by disrespect to classmates and staff, not following directives, and disruptions in the classroom, cafeteria, or hallways. I do see in this list 3 themes kind of interspersed in this top 10 list. One is, of course, attendance, where you see these areas of tardies, and then lower down, leaving class without permission. Another theme is interpersonal relationships, which we can see in the themes of disrespect or disruption in the class, or there's one about profanity in there, and then treatment or use of property, such as the area of unauthorized objects. This slide shows the tables that have the most common referrals within each severity level. So what do we see in these areas? So for example, 54% of all referrals are in that level 1 area, the lowest level of severity of referrals or offenses. Among those level 1 referrals, 24%, that we've seen in that top 10 list, 24% of the level 1s are for excessive tardies, 19 are categorized as not following directives, and 18% of those in level 1 are for other types of disruptions. The most common offense in the level 2 group was related to disrespect to classmates or staff at 31%, so some interpersonal relations here. Level 3, which consists of just 6% of all offense entries, half of them are for fighting. The next highest entry is for tobacco or e-cigarette possession at 13% of the offenses in that group. And at this juncture, we should also note that in an event like a fight, like you see in level 3, they often involve at least 2 offense entries, 1 for each of the students involved. So sometimes it's a single event. So if you had, let's say, 10 entries for fighting, it's likely that there are 5 or fewer actual fight events that occurred in there. So sometimes referrals connect with just a single event. Now we have a very busy graph to walk through, so I'll do the best I can and to translate as we're walking through and let your eyes adjust to some of the print. In this very busy graph, we're counting students in grades 5 through 12 and their frequency of referrals comparing last year and then again this year. Okay? The dark green bar shows the percentage of students who were enrolled who had 0 offenses or referrals. Okay, that's where I had that 74% I mentioned earlier. The light green bar to the right of that is the percentage of students with exactly 1 offense entry. Blue, exactly 2 entries, and that peach color is 3. And then the red is the percentage of students with more than 3 entries. So if we're making some observations with the graph, I think I'd pay the closest attention to the green on the left and the reds on the far right. Starting from the top graph overall, 74% of students had 0 entries, 10 to 11% had exactly 1 referral, 4 to 5% had exactly 2, 3% had exactly 3, and 8% of our students in grades 5 through 12 had more than 3 referrals or offenses in the system. I think it's from, and also when you compare the 23 school year to the 24 school year, those distributions are almost dead even for each of our student groups. I do think it's from these frequencies that we see the entry point for subsequent disparities in actions such as suspensions. While 74% of all students had 0 referrals or offenses, 54 and 56% of black students had 0 referrals, 63 to 64% of students qualifying for free reduced lunch had 0 referrals, as well as students with limited English and students with disabilities. At the other end of the chart on the right-hand side, 8% of our students had 3 or more referrals. Comparatively, 20% of black students, 10 to 15% of several other groups, including Hispanic, multiracial, free and reduced ELL, and students with disabilities, also had more than 3 referrals in the system. So this is counting students. This next graph, we're counting total offense entries. Okay? In this graph, in August through April of the school year, there are more than 17,000 offenses or referral entries for grades 5 through 12. 59% of those entries were a level 1 offense. 35% were at level 2. Fewer than 7% were a level 3 or level 4 offense. When we examine this distribution of offense severity across identified student groups, that distribution is fairly consistent. The one group that strays a little from the pattern is students with disabilities, where the proportion of level 1 referrals is a little smaller and level 2 is a little higher. This graph and the one before it illustrate how evaluating whether there are disparities and the magnitude of the disparities does kind of depend on how we look at the data. In this slide, we're counting students again. Instead of looking at their offense frequencies, I pulled up their highest severity of offense, okay? And in each row across, working across, is the demographic makeup of each of the severity groups. So if we look at the top row, these are the students with 0 referrals. Remember, that's 75% of the population, or 74%. There are 11,655 students in grades 5 through 12 that did not receive a single referral. These students presumably followed all the rules, or at least they never got caught. You can see walking across from left to right, 3% of this group was identified as Asian, 6% black, 20% Hispanic, 6% multiracial, and 32% of that group of students qualified for free reduced lunch. And if I move down a few rows, you see that 782 students had a maximum referral or offense in the level 3 group. 22% of those students are black compared to compared to 6% in the no referral group, 28% Hispanic compared to 20%, and 66% qualifying for free reduced lunch, which compares to our 32% in the no referrals groups. So you can see that the demographic makeup of students does change with each of the severity levels in the referral area. The most notable differences are with students qualifying for qualifying for free reduced lunch, where more than 2/3 of all level 3 or level 4 offenses are connected to economic disadvantage. We also observe some differences across some of the other groups that I read earlier, black, Hispanic, students with disabilities. We'll also noting again, free and reduced ELL and students with disabilities are not equally distributed across each of these racial or ethnic groups as well. Now moving away from the offense and referral entries to disciplinary actions, and for tonight we're going to specifically look at in-school and out-of-school suspensions. From a bird's eye view of the last 2 years compared to the 18-19 school year, which would have been before the current discipline matrix, we are seeing improvement related to our efforts to keep students in school. In 2018-2019, where students were suspended, the global average of number of days per suspension was about 1.7. Under the current matrix, we've reduced this average to about 1.5 days per suspension instance. Principals want to keep kids in school and in class, and a clear matrix, options for restorative justice, and our plans for implementing district-wide research for social and emotional learning are helping us to move in that direction as it relates to student behaviors. This table, now we're moving into the relationship between the referral levels and actions. So this table shows the days of suspension for students whose most severe offense was in level 3 or level 4. And remember that less than 8% of all offenses are in these two levels. And they couldn't isolate level 4 because that number was going to be too small to disaggregate, so I combined the two. There's approximately 800 students in grades 5 through 12 who are represented in this group. Should be no surprise that students with a level or level 3 or level 4 offense are more likely to receive some form of suspension, which is consistent with the discipline matrix when you go look back at the types of offenses that live in these groups. The portions in red on the right indicate that approximately half of all students who had a level 3 or level 4 offense have more than 3 days of in-school or out-of-school suspensions. Keep in mind that the total days of suspension might be associated with multiple offenses, especially when the totals are 3 or larger. For example, a student may have been suspended for 1 day related to one level 3 offense and then 2 days for another. So when you see some variance between the student groups in this graph, it's really, I think, because there's a higher overall frequency of referrals in some of these groups, as we had noted in that first graph that I'd pulled up on that previous slide. In other words, this disparity I see is primarily rooted in the referral side, and the suspension data lags several steps behind the initiating causes. This graph shows suspension rates associated with level 2 offenses, which represents approximately 1,800 students, grades 5 through 12. As noted by the range of actions in the matrix, suspensions related to level 2 offenses are less common. So you see the dark green bars on the left. More than half of all students whose highest level of offense is at level 2 will never receive a suspension. Approximately 20% of students in this group only experience an in-school or out-of-school suspension for 1 day or less. I see a lot of fractions in the system for maybe a half a day, or they got in some trouble maybe 5th hour and they hang on to them for the remainder of the day, some situations like that. Suspensions shown as multiple days are typically associated with multiple level 2 referrals. Again, we see little variation, some variation between student groups that's consistent with the referral frequency data that we started with. And finally, within the level 1 offenses, we expect suspensions to be quite rare, and perhaps only applied if a student has repeated many times level 1 offenses. And I think in the rare case of the suspension is issued, that it might more than likely be an in-school suspension if I were to dig deeper into the data. So in summary, while we have seen some improvements in our behavioral data compared, especially before the matrix was put in place, and even from last year, the data from last year and this year are nearly identical in the proportions that we're seeing. The discipline matrix is working to the extent that the severity of actions correspond to the severity of referral or offense, and school administrators are working very hard to keep students in school and in class and working on that Tier 1 support behaviorally. Our data continues to reveal some disparities in behavior violations across student groups, which then translates into some differences in the number of days missed due to in or out of school suspensions. And much of this can be attributed to that volume of referrals. This coming year, we're looking forward to district-wide implementation of the Character Strong resources and the potential impact it will have on promoting student behaviors. And again, I think the goal to me is working on that no referrals area. And that concludes our report, and we'll stand for questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Did you want to start, Dr. Harper, before we take?
The only thing that I would add is that we're constantly having conversations around the discipline matrix. We had some group of students come to us this year and suggest some changes. We're still working through that process, but we have met with students and we're listening to that and then taking suggestions to the principals, and then we would be adjusting those in the handbooks that would come to you in June. And I do anticipate at least one change or two changes in that discipline matrix coming soon.
While you're on that, in that train of thought, so the discipline matrix is really kind of mostly 2 years in place in the district. Can you just speak really briefly about what supports or processes are in place to help implement that from, I guess, maybe starting with
So it
principals?
started in the strategic planning process in cycle 1. That's where it originated from. And then we had a subcommittee. Dr. Schumacher, can you talk about that subcommittee? Were you on that? Or you were? Dr.
So within that committee, we had district personnel, we had principals represented at each level, we had certified, classified. We had numerous patrons from our community, as well as parents and students were involved in that committee, and we met, I'd say no less than, goodness gracious, probably 6 to 8 times. Lots of interesting discussions, lots of directions, and the thing I like the most about it is that we're still willing to continue for this document to evolve, to best serve kids and to best serve our teachers and administrators. And so I really appreciate the work that Dr. Ziegler has done with the group of students, with the recommendations that are going to come to us. And so not only do we continue to look at the data from the parameters and the borders that came out of that committee, but we're going to continue to look at how the impact and the effects going day to day and necessary changes that are going to benefit our students. So lots of work, time, and effort was put into that group. Great group.
And okay, thank you. I appreciate that history. And then that really, our building principals really lead kind of the support with them and bringing that into
Correct.
the
The next step,
implementation
yeah, it was
in the
shared.
building levels.
Yeah, it was shared with district officials. Once it left that group, it went to the steering committee. It was shared with building administrators. It was also shared next with building leadership teams. Then it was shared at staff meetings. So this was rolled out on multiple levels to get buy-in and get an understanding so we could all function on the same page and all work in the same direction. Restorative justice is also an evolving, continued piece that we're looking at.
And then edits since then, if you'll recall, we had one last year around cell phone usage. And then the one that is surfacing now came, actually a group of students from all 5 high schools sent myself a letter. And so that's where the discussion started with this year's.
All right. So we're already starting to see some degree of impact based on kind of even just reduction in the duration of suspensions after kind of 2 initial years of implementation. And then there's a process in place to continue to refine and build feedback into that. Okay.
As well as the hearings.
Clarification on process. Okay. Thank you for letting me jump in first. I try not to do that. Thank you, Ms. Borgman.
Yeah, Dr. Hubbard, I noticed, and Dr. Grumman referenced that Dr. Lisa Grumman is in the audience. Clearly a very well-respected principal within our district, and I just would like to get her feedback on what she sees on a daily basis and ways that we could lean in and improve in this area.
Is that okay? Okay. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. I think, okay. I think one of the most important things is actually what Dr. Greenman referenced in terms of really working on what I would call kind of coaching in some respects, like as principals and administrators working with students, we have the opportunity to kind of coach and work through a reflective cycle on kind of what happened in this incident and what might we be able to do, that would be different next time. So it's a lot of those conversations and a lot of that teaching that is happening around behavior and how do we resolve conflicts in a peaceful manner. How do we engage our resources and our supports within our school, our teachers, our social workers, our counselors, to try to resolve some of these situations in a manner that's going to be more appropriate. Similar with the disrespect, the tardiness, things like that. A lot of it's coaching, shaping behaviors, and really trying to help our students develop those interpersonal skills that they will need when engaging in a career, when engaging with their post-secondary plans beyond us. A lot of this work is foundational to helping them develop and build those skills that they need to be successful young people.
Please do.
Thank you, Dr. Grumman. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for being here after a long day of school. Could you give us, I think stories kind of help bring points home and make it seem real for us without giving away any student name or identification or anything like that. Could you maybe share with us a story about one or two students that you've seen how these conversations have really sort of changed maybe how they approach a situation that...
Yes, so I would say, for example, in certain situations, like just building an awareness, like sometimes like things that we would do with our friends, for example, might not be appropriate in the classroom. The way we talk to our friend, the language we use with our friend, sometimes can actually create spaces that are not as safe for students. So I might use a particular word with my friends, and we know what that means with each other. So I've really seen kind of a lot of students respond really well to that coaching and start to recognize that maybe we need to formalize our language a little bit more in the classrooms and how we interact with people. And people may overhear that conversation and overhear that word, and they may feel very differently about having that experience of hearing that word. And I think it's really important that we're aware of not only our one-on-one conversation, but how those around us are engaging with those experiences. So I think bringing that awareness beyond ourselves to students, they really are thoughtful and they do reflect on that. And I think that's probably one of the places that I've seen the biggest change in behaviors.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Yep, quick question, or maybe it's not so quick, I guess. But I understand as a district, we have a pretty uniform way or opportunities for students to behave in the best manner possible across the district. I just wanted to know if we're working vertically within our feeder patterns to address some of these concerns of students. Of course, we don't want to label any student from middle school to high school as that specific student with that thing, but are there any middle school examples of how we're setting our students up for success to enter our high schools in a meaningful way?
I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Case for a moment, and then I'll fill in any.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the question and the opportunity to be able to speak to that. At the middle school level, we sort of are that middle of the pack, right? And so we do a lot to reach down to elementary schools and then vice versa to be able to extend up to high schools. We're sort of in that phase right now where we're having conversations with the elementary social workers, elementary principals. Our associate principal and counseling team spend a lot of time in setting up some of those conversations right now with elementaries, and then we'll be doing a little bit more of that. It's more of a one-to-one from middle school to high school, so we don't have to spend quite as much intentionality time as we do at the elementary schools in the north area, having 8 elementaries that feed into our middle schools. It takes a little more time and intentionality to focus there. So there's definitely a lot of those conversations that happen in the sense of giving students an opportunity for that fresh start, but also recognizing that we may need some additional supports to help them be successful as they transition to the middle school.
All right, Ms. Embry?
Thank you. I don't know who the right person is for this question. I'm glad all of you are here. I'm glad to have such a large group that can respond. I'm curious to know, this is the first year we've clarified in our student handbook that possession of a cell phone, I think that specifically says cell phones and personal devices are to be turned off and put away during the day in order to respect the educational environment of the classroom, and goes on to explain that anytime that is not followed, it'll be on the discipline matrix as a level 1 offense. So I'm kind of curious if we've actually seen more of those level 1 offenses coming as a result of this clarification. We've had public comment just tonight. I've gotten many, many emails from parents and teachers who say, this is what it says on the handbook, but what it's actually looking like in the building is not necessarily the same thing.
I'm going to lead a little bit with what that looks like in the discipline matrix, because we
Thank
don't
you.
have a code that says like cell phone, right?
Okay.
So a lot of times those behaviors will manifest themselves in other codes, like unauthorized object, repeated classroom violation, some of these other areas, depending on, depending on what's actually happening, with the phone. If, an example might be if a student has a phone out and they're asked to put it away and they don't, that might be a, refusal to follow directives. Or if a student uses the phone and physically hits another student with that's something different. I did do a search, at least precursory, for the word phone in the system. Of course, that could also mean I made a phone call home in the description, so that might also be mixed in. But we are seeing in the data, for example, disruptions in the classroom, cafeteria, hallway, that declined by 17% in that area. But not following directives, for example, increased by 7%. So we see some shifts in those codes, and then the other thing is when I did the word search, we do see just straight up numbers of the word phone. We do see from last year to this year an increase in the number of times the word phone appears in middle school, but a decrease in high school. And some of that might be attributed to poll, and this is, you could maybe speak to that, but because we have better clarity now in cell phone practices across all the schools, that it doesn't surprise me anyway that we see an uptick in some of those referrals, just because we're still teaching students those appropriate behaviors, and we've also provided teachers with the right kind of clarity so that they have some clear guidance on when a referral should be put in the system.
So just to add to that, I think cell phones as a whole, and maybe technology from maybe even a broader standpoint, is so varied and so general. I can think of situations where we've had a disruption in the classroom because two students were fighting over one student had the other student's cell phone, and so we categorize that as a disruption of the classroom. I think of another situation very recently where we had a student sitting in the office because their phone was shattered and refused to be able to, they wanted to be able to have that phone in the classroom even if it was in the classroom, but that was a problem, and they weren't able to get to class because we were sort of in that stalemate of whether or not they would be willing to give up the phone. And so I think we were at the very beginning of the year with the new district guidance on cell phones, we were very intentional about communicating to both families and students. And so I don't know that I could say specifically that there's been a rise or a decline, and probably depending on which building principal you asked, they would give you a different answer as to how prevalent that's been in the classroom. But I would say technology as a whole, including MacBooks and internet and all the things, right, are things that we face as part of a distraction to student learning every day.
All right, were there any? Ms. Owsley? Oh, okay. Okay.
I just had a quick follow-up on the question related to like vertical integration that Mario was referencing. Prior to COVID, I know we had students from the high schools meeting with like kids from the middle schools and providing like mentorship opportunities or, tutoring on subjects if they needed assistance, and in turn having middle school kids do similar activities with elementary school kids. And we have the pair-ups for like orchestra and band, where orchestra students can do like golden strings with the younger kids, or the band students bring in the younger kids up to the high schools. But that communication, are we doing that now? Now that COVID is done, are we reintegrating those practices so students who need that interconnectedness as they're moving along the line are getting some of that targeted integration into the larger community? Just since discipline is related to like behavioral issues, and behavior is communication and that sort of thing. So I hadn't heard as much about that since COVID, and so I'm just curious if we're back to doing that.
Yes, I can say that a lot of our student athletes actually fill the role as mentors for a variety of reasons, but that's an opportunity for them. We've reconnected, especially with like Benninghoven being right next door to us, but also with Trail Ridge, and a lot of those connections are being reestablished. And our CCC enrollment and our teacher ed enrollment is thriving, and those are opportunities to get students in the classroom and working with students, and an opportunity for a teacher to provide individualized or small group instruction through partnering with those students. So we're grateful for those teachers that work with our students and hope that they see the benefit of them connecting and building those connections with their students.
All right. Ms. Boyd-Norella. And I would just like to add that even I, as an educator and parent of 3, still get lost in translation when I'm trying to explain things to my own kids who live with me or have lived with me. So I look forward to, though, the district taking more of an initiative and just awareness as the educators and teachers are gaining more clarity, that we also continue to bring the youth to the table for their clarity on the very term of referrals, which is kind of like that impetus for so many things to happen, good and bad. But that's one thing that I would look forward to seeing data on, just not only the clarity from the teachers and educators and staff, admin, but also some input and accountability, perhaps, of learning and fully understanding why you got this, right? What led up to it, versus just, oh, the teacher did this. Well, 2 parts to this story, right? So helping the students, as you've kind of talked to already, have a bit more of accountability as well in gaining clarity of why is this happening. All right. Mr. Westbrook.
Well, I'm really impressed by the comprehensiveness of this report and how carefully you've analyzed all the data in a way that converts it into intelligence. And it's very, very helpful. I wonder about so-called COVID kids, and I'm reluctant to label any of our kids anything, but the COVID experience was unique, and I wonder if there is any evidence or correlation between that group of kids and their experience with COVID and their relationship to obedience or disobedience or discipline challenges. Do we see any relationship between aberrant numbers that might exist among that group versus the rest of the population we're taking care of?
I would say in all of our data sets, we do see some waves, depending on, and it's whether it's their reading performance, math performance. I think it shows up in the behavioral performance as well, and it's. I see it as it's related to at what point in that student's life did they experience what I might call the COVID years, right? So I do see some correlations there in not just the behavioral data, but other data sets as well.
I would also add that this report is focused on 5th through 12th grade, and I know our elementary teachers would tell you that we definitely see reactions to students in kindergarten through 5th grade that we haven't really talked about in this report in regard to just behaviors of coming into school, lack of pre-K opportunities during COVID, and just interaction with other families. And a lot of kids stayed home that would have traditionally even been in an organized daycare. So we're definitely seeing some of those behavior patterns in kindergarten through 5th grade as well.
Well, I'm glad we're paying attention to it. It's very subtle and nuanced, but it's there, and I assume we've looked at opportunities for intervention when we see other data as well. And so I appreciate the transparency in this report. It's fabulous information.
All right. Oh, Mr. Case, please go.
Sorry, just speaking to that, I think in a building it's almost hard to miss, right? We noticed as students started coming back from COVID, there are some things that just transitionally year to year that we took for granted that students just knew how to fill in the blank, right? And that as we've gotten more and more into consistent years where we've had traditional years to be able to rely on that previous year that was a normal year, we're seeing more and more of the bounce back of the academic piece, and we know that there is so much of a tie between a student's ability to be able to be successful academically in a classroom and behavioral results also. So we're seeing both just the ability to know how to walk in a classroom or how to walk in a hallway, way, as well as just because they're feeling more academically successful, they can also be more behaviorally successful.
All right. Thank you very much for this very informative report, Dr. Grumman, and this conversation. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. All right. We have our third report, discussion item, the Safety and Security Program update, school year 24. Dr. Hubbard?
Yeah, I would like to invite Chief Schmidt and Officer Laughlin. They're going to be presenting to us tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for having us, Dr. Sinclair, Dr. Hubbard, Board. We appreciate being here and spending a few minutes with you. You all received our more comprehensive report. I hope you've had the opportunity to take a look at that. And if you have any questions when we're done, I'm happy to answer those. Briefly go over some of the slides that we wanted to present to you tonight. The department, as you see it today, has basically been in effect since 2014 when Chief John Douglas took the reins and had our first security, actually a director of the security and police department, gave us an opportunity to hire very skilled, trained, veteran police officers, which we're fortunate to still have today working with this. I took Chief Douglas's place in 2020. I came here in 2014 under Chief Douglas and then took the chief's job in 2020 and have enjoyed every minute of being here in my long 40-some year police career. So I enjoy being here. We're a small department. We're made up of myself, 8 DROs, which are our district resource officers, which are at the high schools, and 1 officer that's actually is more of a roving position. There's the dispatcher, Eric, which you've probably all met out front, that handles all the calls that come in, monitors the cameras, monitors the alarm system, and checks visitors in and out of the building here. The CSOs at all the high schools are the officer that you meet in the front that checks you in, checks in students that are arriving late to school, checks kids out for lunch, and monitors all the cameras in that particular district. So we have about 1,800 cameras that we're watching on a daily basis. So that takes about all 6 of those people to maintain and monitor those cameras. A little bit about our training. I won't read that to you, but some of the biggest important ones are our crisis intervention training. All of the officers are required to be CT crisis intervention trained. It's a 40-hour curriculum, and they have to maintain that on every educational year for law enforcement. That's a big one for us. The Kansas Juvenile Officers Association, I'll mention that for 2 different reasons. One is they provide us with a lot of training that we receive. They also give us our legal updates, and I want to announce Officer Laughlin is now the president of the Kansas Juvenile Officers Association. He took the reins of that position just a short time ago, so we're very fortunate to have Philip with us in that position. We all train with all of the police departments around us. I think you probably saw us this year at Shawnee Mission West for crisis events, emergency events that can take place. We train with every police agency in the county, all of the EMS, all of the paramedics, to make sure that we train together. We do things as a team. We make sure our radios all work and we can talk to each other. And we do those types of training on a regular basis. This summer we're not furnishing the building. We're going to be someplace else, but our officers will all be participating in that crisis team training. The roles of the officers, there's a lot of stuff written there. I'll tell you our biggest role is to mentor with the kids in our building and to work closely with our administrators and become a team. I go to Dr. Grumman's slide. There's 4 arrests this year. 4. And that's the lowest it's ever been since I've been here. And I attribute that to a lot of factors. One is we got great kids. And We have great officers and great administrators who have all been in their buildings for a long period of time, and they work well together. They know the parents, they know the kids, and our goal is to keep them out of the juvenile justice system. So there's very few times that we have to enter that arena, and that small number of 4 total arrests, I think, reflects everybody working very, very hard at that. And if you know that kid when he's in trouble or she's in trouble and you know their parents, our goal is to handle it right there in the building and not have to make it an event that takes them down a path that we're trying to keep them out of. So there's a lot of stuff written there, but the bottom line is mentoring and being friends with those kids. And they trust us and we trust them. So I'm going to let Philip talk a little bit about a lot of the technical stuff that we do. You see the cameras, you see we check open doors and the alarms, but there's a lot of technology that we use. There's a lot of technology coming out every day. Look at new products on a regular basis, Zero Eye, and it's coming on the market quickly. We look at all of that. Probably the important thing we do is collaborate with the other police agencies. I meet with all the commanders on a monthly basis, and some I meet on a weekly basis, and that gives us the opportunity to be on the same page, which again, I think goes back and reflects those low negative numbers and good positive numbers. And I think that's all because we're all trying to do the same thing at the same time and doing it as a team. So I'll let Philip talk some about it, the technical aspects, and then if you have some questions, we're here to talk about it.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Gilhouse and Dr. Hubbard. Some of my admin duties include department purchasing and procurement, equipment maintenance, and filling in for Mark as acting supervisor when he takes off. But another task that we have is scheduling officers to cover evening events. When the dismissal bell rings, that does not always mean the DRO's day is done. We provide a police and security presence at about 250 events per school year, most of these occurring in the evenings or Saturdays. These events can occur or can include athletic competitions, student dances, facility rentals, and graduations, just to name a few. We also provide officer coverage during the district summer academy, enrichment, and ESY programs. Our district police department's success comes from having a great experienced team of people, but also being supported by tools and technology to enhance school safety. For example, our Raptor Technologies visitor management system vets visitors and keeps a log of visitors that visit during academic hours. Last year, our system vetted about 104,000 visitors to the school. Raptor has the capability to keep those records of trespass individuals or orders of protection from the courts when they are entered. It also has a panic alert system which notifies district police, administration, and building staff if there is an issue. The Sprigio Bully Report System allows administration and officers to receive bully reports so they can be investigated immediately. Those making the reports have the option to remain anonymous, and that system is on every district device and can be also submitted through the SMSD website. We use a Vigilon video surveillance and access control, which allows us to monitor our cameras, our buildings, and the physical access to those buildings and receive any notifications for any alarms. We utilize and maintain about 2,200 two-way radios that the schools use for daily operation. In every school office, there is also a public safety radio that can talk district-wide in the event of an emergency and speak directly to first responders at a touch of a button. Lastly, the district's emergency operation plan, or EOP, is currently being reviewed. This will provide administration with an updated EOP that will be available in a user-friendly booklet and also on their smart device. We are on track to have this completed before the start of the next school year. I'll turn it back now over to Mark to conclude with some final remarks. Thank you.
Again, I hate to read this stuff when it's on the board and anybody can read it. I'm going to just emphasize what we do. We're certified police officers. We're all trained by the state academy. Everybody has 15 to 20 years of experience under their belt. At the time they get here, we've hired one new officer since I've been here, and she finished number 1 in her academy of class. She's at Shawnee Mission South now and doing a great job, and she's jumps right in and knows what she's doing. She had great training there, and she had great training officers here. It's important that we're working closely, again, I mentioned, with the local police commanders. We're on first name basis and meet regularly, and I think that's a key to everybody knowing what everybody's doing. If we have a threat that comes in the middle of the night, we're all on the phone. I wake up Dr. Gilhouse or Dr. Sherman, who's back way left. But we have a very cohesive team that we know what we're doing, and we have great administrators that know what we're doing too. And when we do it together, we have a positive into most of those things. So I will answer any of your questions. I hate to read to you. It's on the board there, but I'm sure happy to answer any questions that you may have about our operation.
Chief Schmidt, thank you, and Officer Laughlin for your presentation in this report. Congratulations on your presidency of the Juvenile Officer Association. I appreciate the depth of experience and leadership that the team brings to our district. I'm going to look to Dr. Hubbard first before I open up for questions, okay? Ms. Boyd-Norena?
I'm glad you brought up the Zero Eye. Don't want to deep dive into it tonight, but I did see that on the news today, earlier, so it piqued my interest and wondering if we were going to jump in on that but I saw that on the news today, so you kind of piqued my interest when you mentioned it.
Absolutely. There's some great products out there, and we try to take a look and visit with any of those vendors that are moving forward with the latest technology, and that is one of them.
All right. Anyone else? Questions? Ms. Embry?
Thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I think my question is mostly around, and I'm reflecting on the presentation we just had from Dr. Grumman that was so heavy on data around school discipline. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what kind of data you get from, I'm glad we're collaborating so closely with the 4 police departments that we contract with for SROs. What kind of data do they actually report back to the district?
Dr. Hubbard will receive a report at the end of the year with every type of report that was taken, and we all exchange that information at the end of the year. For us, our report numbers are down extremely from what they were even last year. I think it's 55 is all the reports we've taken this year, and a majority of those are general information where we were there, we just want to make a few notes about what occurred just to keep a file. It's not necessarily an offense or an offense report, but we'll exchange all that data at the end of the year, and Dr. Hubbard gets that report.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dr. Gilhouse or Chief Schmidt, would one of you talk about what we did in 2022 to sort of streamline that and where we've been since then?
I think that was one of the challenges that we faced with the end of the year report that you're referring to, and that was the inconsistency with the 4 municipalities that we deal with when it comes to our school resource officers. We met with them that summer, had an extensive report all afternoon. They went back. We shared kind of what we were looking for that was going to help us give a cleaner report to not only the superintendent but also to the board. And so they were on board with it, as well as I know I certainly can't or don't meet as much as Officer Laughlin and Officer Schmidt do with the municipalities, but we touch base with them all the time, and they've been extremely cooperative, and we're hoping that report is tied into where we can utilize that, and it's not in their own language and own terminology.
Thank you. Yeah, that's mostly what I was getting at, was I think one of the odd things about our community is that we have 4 different cities within our school district. It's not like we're KC-Mo where we nicely line up with a specific jurisdiction, and that's a great opportunity, but it also means you can have 4 different police departments with 4 different ways of doing things and 4 different police chiefs and 4 different sets of data. So I'm glad to hear there's some consistency.
I just want to clarify too, we actually have more than 4, we just contract with 4. I mean, we have a lot more police departments than that, 14 cities.
Woo, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Ms. Osley?
So thank you very much for the data and for the information. I like that it's paired with the discipline presentation so we can look at it holistically. And as a parent in the district, we appreciate your guys' work on keeping all our kids safe. My question is, with our lower numbers and, in the discipline presentation saying, 23, 24 is our new baseline, is this a fluke or is this a new baseline, do we think, with our... Is it too soon to tell? I guess that is what trend data is, but they have their ear to the ground, Dr. Sinclair.
Sorry.
So I guess do we have reason to believe that this is, a reflection of a pattern in practice, or is this, potentially just this is a one-off and we're going to have to see what the trends look like?
I'm going to start and then I'll let Dr. Gilhouse and Chief Schmidt add on. I think it's too early to 100% tell, but I do think a lot of the actions from our first strategic plan are coming into play in regards to strategy 2, work around culture, training that all of our staff have gone through, training that our kids have gone through at the high school level with the YES group. I think an intentional effort from Chief Schmidt and all of our officers to engage in proactive, he used the word mentorship. I just think a different approach. I think longevity of some of our high school principals now. We had a lot of turnover prior to this plan, and I just think intentionality of relationships with kids. So while I think it might be early, I do think it's a new trend.
I think it's an intentional effort that we've implemented a few years ago to actually get our officers more involved in the classroom instead of watching cameras. It's been nice with the addition of our CSOs. So now our DROs and our SROs are out with the kids. When lunchtime comes, they're out at lunch, they're visible, they're out on campus, they're meeting with kids. And so a lot of the unnecessary or kind of the negative stereotypes that have been associated with officers in the past with our kids are now meeting our kids, and we're getting them into the elementary schools at a young age and letting them know that our police officers are friendly and can serve as a wonderful, positive resource. And so I think the extra effort that our officers have made over the past few years will continue to see these numbers stay extremely low. There's always going to be outliers, anomalies, some things like warrants that we have no control over that take place outside of school that they issue within the school day, often increase our numbers, but I think the work that these guys have done and the work with the administrators and the teachers has paid dividends, and I think it will continue.
I'll only chime in one little bit, and I was at one of the schools the other day, and they were waiting in line to get into the officer's office. I thought, what's going on? Are we taking statements? I got in there, they were making burritos. And it's Burrito Thursday, and the kids couldn't wait to get in to see Officer Tony for their burrito. It's those things that officers have been there long enough that they're established and everybody knows them. They're a fixture with their community, and they're part of their community. And that, I think, that along with what Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Gilhouse have said, all that comes together, and I hope it's a trend.
I appreciate the focus on training too, just looking at the list of those content areas, mental health and trauma, de-escalation techniques, the racial implicit bias recognition, all of those are very kind of student focused and.
Absolutely. We exceed all the state standards for training.
Ms. Borgman. Yeah.
I just thank you so much. The safety of our students and our staff is number one, and so thank you for all that you do to ensure a safe environment for everyone within our schools. And I just, just like what you all have said, thank you for just going the extra mile on a regular basis. My favorite story of an SRO officer is the SRO officer at Trail Ridge who coaches basketball. Yes. And so not only are you, you're SRO officers by day and coaches by night, and so, your hearts are mostly for kids, and their safety, and also the staff as well. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for just the pride that you take in, reducing the number of arrests and making sure that you are taking a more proactive stance rather than having to resort to something as severe as an arrest. So just thanks for all that you do.
We appreciate it, and we thank you for letting us be here.
All right. Thank you so much.
I might just add too that we do have in the action item tonight our 4 contracts with our 4 cities that we contract with, so that'll be coming soon.
Thank you. Okay, so we have our 4th and final discussion item and presentation for this evening, item 3.4, the budget workshop operating funds.
Right, so I'm going to turn it over for Russell nap time.
For Russell what?
Russell nap time.
Nobody go to sleep. Let's go. Come on. All right. Well, good evening. Tonight's budget workshop is the second of 2 workshops. In April, we had our non-operating. Tonight is our operating funds. During the budget development process, the building needs are assessed to allocate financial resources to support the district's strategic plan. The district's total budget is $485 million, which is made up of 37 separate funds that we categorize into these 5 groups. Again, tonight we'll focus on the operating funds that make up 59% of our total budget, which is equal to about $286 million. The budget development process begins in November by schools and departments assessing students and building needs and incorporating those needs into the budget requests for the future year. The profile and needs assessments for each school can be found on the district's website under Information Central. Revenue estimates are made in December and tweaked if funding changes are enacted by the spring legislative session. As we heard tonight, Senate Bill 387 has passed and will be soon sitting on the governor's desk for approval. The numbers tonight will include all those funding increases in that bill. Our HR team reviews building needs assessments and future staffing needs with their elementary and secondary principals. Cabinet reviews the preliminary budget and provides the budget team with any adjustments. Personnel changes are then incorporated into the budget and other major budget line items are finalized. The recommended budget is presented to the board at board meetings in April and May, and then lastly, we approve the budget in August. Our operating funds consist of these 12 funds listed on this slide. Each fund is associated with a weighted formula in the school finance formula. Since all state aid is deposited into the general fund and the local option budget tax is deposited into the supplemental general fund, these 10 sub-funds are supported by transfers from the general fund or the supplemental general fund. The main revenue sources for your operating funds are state aid and your local option budget taxes. Funding begins with our student headcount. As we all know, enrollment dropped significantly during the pandemic, but since we have added 1,000 students back. The district is projecting 26,373 students for the 24-25 school year, a slight decrease of 74 students. And as the graph indicates, our projections will slightly decrease over the next 5 years. We anticipate the 24-25 operative funding to be $304 million with approximately 73% of revenues coming from general state aid and 24% coming from local taxes. The 24-25 budget includes these funding assessments, or funding assumptions. The base amount is based on a 3-year average of the Consumer Price Index, which increased 5.7%. So the base will go to $5,378, an increase of $290 per FTE. House Substitute Bill 73 changed FTE enrollment to be based on the hire of the current year or the prior year. So for 24-25, they did allow one transition year. So our FTE will be based on a 2-year average, which our funding will decrease 65.7 FTE for next year's budget. The remaining weightings are based on a current September 20th audit enrollment. We have budgeted a slight decrease of 31.1 FTE, mainly due to our COLA factor is decreasing slightly. So our current budget is based on 6.57%. We are, the state has calculated that to go down to 6.39 as state law. The max you can be is going to be 7%, but that will be increased slightly because it's based on CPI as well. The LOB base is also based on the CPI, and that will increase 5.7% to $5,452 will be the base for your LOB. SPED state aid is based on reimbursement of costs, so teachers are reimbursed at 100%, and pairs are reimbursed at 40% of the SPED reimbursement rate, which still hasn't been established for 24-25 yet, but we're working off 30,800 reimbursement rate. So the budget does include 20.1 special education FTE that we would get reimbursement on. In addition, the state's K-12 budget includes $75 million in additional special education state aid. KSDE is in the process of finalizing the method of distributing the $75 million to school districts. The run that we most recently saw, Shawnee Mission, we get $3.8 million additional dollars of that $75 million. The budget includes $2 million for interest income, which is $2 million less than what we project to have this year. We project that we're going to have close to $4 million in interest, and we're going to conservatively take that back to $2 million since we don't have a crystal ball to know what the interest income is going to do for next year. So on to our expenditures. The pie chart depicts the breakdown of the operating budget in the larger expenditure classifications. As noted, school districts' budgets are labor intensive, as 84% of our budget is dedicated to salary and benefits. So our total expenditures of $288 million as of today is it does not include any salary and health increases for 24-25. So here's some of the budget assumptions that we made in building our expenditure side of the budget for 24-25. It does include professional growth, $1.2 million. That's when the teachers move horizontal across the salary schedule for additional college credit. The requested budget includes adding 85.8 FTE, which I'll discuss further on my next slide. The budget includes an additional $1 million to increase the classified salary schedules to continue our efforts to make hourly rates competitive with our surrounding school districts and the private sector. If you recall, a year ago, the board approved $1 million to combine multiple classified schedules into one more competitive schedule. In addition, during this year, we have offered close to $360,000 in retention incentives, referral bonuses, and signing bonus. And all those three programs will end on June 30th if not renewed. As presented to the board in February, the budget includes absorbing ESSER funding for building subs into the operating funds. That was approximately about $1.9 million. Health insurance, we have received our renewal premium, and it came in at 9.5%. The Benefits Committee has met and reviewed the proposal, and their recommendation to the board was to increase the district monthly contribution 9.5%, which would be $78. It would take it from $816 to $894 a month for single coverage. That's approximately about $1.8 million. But that is not in this budget at this time because the $816 contribution is a negotiable item that they'll talk about on Wednesday. In addition, the Benefits Committee recommended that the HMO plan, which is the most expensive plan and drives a lot of our health costs, will be closed to new enrollments. And so the $2.7 million for health insurance, it's reflective of $2.2 million worth of vacancies. So we got about 225 vacancies. So that's the health insurance for those. Again, if they stay vacant, that money does fall out in the budget year. In addition, we add members to the plan from the prior budget year, so that adds cost. And then we also had the increase of $24 from the 24 calendar year, and so you pay for 4 months and 6 months of that increase. So that's built into this year's budget. We're still on my page. Thank you. We are currently in the process of negotiating with our student bus contract with DS Bus. They are in negotiations with their union as well. We anticipate a 10% increase in our transportation costs for 24-25, so we built that into the budget. Supplies and services, we're going to decrease $2.1 million. Utilities are going to increase $815,000. The decrease in the supplies and services is because our contracted services for those hard-to-fill positions, those are reflected in the supplies and services line. If we need those contracted services for next year, we will freeze those vacancy positions and we'll use that budget to pay for those contracted services. So it shows like a $2.2 million decrease for the budget. And as we presented to our board in April when we went over our instructional resource material purchasing schedule, we are going to budget $3 million transfer to what we call the textbook rental fund to help pay for that textbook cycle out through 6 or 7 years. Okay, now we get there. All right, the personal change slide. We are in the budget. It includes 85.8 positions totaling $7.2 million. In January each year, HR team goes through their staffing with all the building principals, and it's all based on projected enrollments for next year. We tweak it all the way up through August when we know what our enrollment is in 24, the fall of 24. We are going to add 6 teachers because of that. To avoid some planning concerns that we have, our instructional coaches are currently being funded by federal dollars. We're going to absorb all those into the operating funds. ESSER 3 funding ends this coming September. So as presented to the board in February, due to the available funds that we do have available, we're going to absorb 32 positions into the operating funds. This will allow us to continue staffing elementaries at the lower staffing guidelines. Due to the additional special education funding that we are receiving, we are able to add 21.3 positions to address special education needs, and those are both teachers and paraprofessionals. And since we are adding middle schools in the fall, they need somebody to coach them, so we got $50,000 in there to go find some coaches. Next one. So that kind of brings to the summary of our fund balances. Is just brings it all together. At this time for the current year, 23-24 year that we are in, we are projecting revenues to exceed expenditures by $9.5 million, and that's mainly due to at-risk weightings came in higher than budgeted. That was an additional $2.3 million we weren't expecting. Interest rates stayed up. Cash flow was good. We received $2.3 million in additional interest than what we originally budgeted. So there's about $4.6 million on the revenue side that we typically don't realize in our actual numbers. And then again, we have significant vacancy savings on our expenditure side. So we project our ending balance to be $39.7 million for this year. The 24-25 anticipated budget estimated revenues are to exceed expenditures by $15.3 million. This does not include any compensation packages for any of our pay groups. The IBB team is scheduled to address compensation at their meeting on Wednesday. So that kind of concludes my slides on operating funds, so we'll jump to federal funds real quick. A lot of the allocations are preliminary at this time. We have received preliminary allocations for Title I, 2A, 3, and 4, and pretty much they all just stayed flat. No big increases or decreases there. Title 6B, we have not received yet, but word on the street that that'll be flat as well. ESSER 3 must be obligated by September 30th as we close out and we translate or transition all those to the operating funds. We are projected to have $4.9 million left to spend between July and September. So here's our chart of our ESSER 3 funds. This is what we present each month to the board. Again, we were able to move 32 ESSER positions to the operating fund, so you see no cost there for 24-25. We are projecting that we'll have $4.9 million to spend, and so that will be funding the $1,400 retention payment. That's an action item 7.0 tonight for your consideration on the board agenda, and so that's where that funding will come, and that we'll hope that'll close out ESSER 3 by September 30th. So I presented this mill levy history graph to you in April. I presented a 0.62% or approximately $7 annual increase on a $200,000 house. With that additional $75 million, that flows through the school finance formula, so you can pick up the LOB authority on that $75 million. So that will, our estimates will increase our mill levy 1.23% or $10 annually on a $200,000 house. Again, we won't know what our mill levies are until the assessed valuation is finalized in October, and then our mill levies are finalized shortly after that. Also, we talked about Senate Bill 37, the tax bill that has passed, and a possible veto by the governor. We'll wait and see on that, but included in that, the 20 mil general fund is proposed to go to 19.5, so the mill levies would go down 0.5 if that becomes law. And then another tax break is the general fund property valuation goes from $42,000, the exempt amount goes from $42,000 to $100,000, given a tax break on your property values. Lastly, tonight concludes the budget workshops for the board. The formal budget approval process starts with the approval to consider exceeding the revenue neutral rate, and we'll do that on the June 24th board meeting, and then a few more steps in between there, and then the adoption and the hearings, or I guess the hearings first, and then the adoption of the budget on August 26th. So that concludes my presentation. Be glad to answer any questions you might have. Hopefully everybody is still awake.
I would just add, while I did have a fun play on words introducing Russell Knapp, no one appreciates Russell more than I do, so thank you.
All right. Questions? Ms. Humphrey?
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. I stayed awake at least 99% of the entire time. I wanted to just ask about, I know we're in the middle of the strategic planning process right now, and our action teams are meeting and coming up with a lot of fantastic ideas for what the district might look like over the next 5 years. This budget assumes sort of standard operations moving forward. It doesn't incorporate any of the funding needs that may stem from the strategic planning process. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I was just looking at, it's kind of a, maybe a next step in that thinking, Ms. Humphrey, is looking at the personnel assumptions, like the changes that were built in, and those, looking at the list of absorbing some of the positions that we had added on, the 50-some positions we added on from the federal relief funding from the COVID-related dollars, the ESSER dollars, as well as adding some additional special education staff and some other pieces in here. Is there a connection there between the building needs assessments and our current strategic plan, and how that's maybe feeding into the next cycle of strategic planning? Like these personnel changes, how much are they kind of derived from the building needs assessments? And
I would say they're all I think it's fair to say they all came out of the building needs assessment and/or the teacher advisory groups. I talked to both elementary teacher advisory and secondary advisory specifically around ESSER dollars, and said, we can't keep everything, but this is your opportunity to tell us what do you want us to keep. So we asked there. Trying to think if we had anywhere else. Building needs assessment is the biggest place that most of all of these positions
And
came
what
from.
is that connection between the building needs assessment and the strategic plan? I mean,
I'm not sure I 100% understand your question.
well, are the building needs assessments connected to the strategic plan and the goals of the strategic plan?
Oh, absolutely, in regards to especially student achievement. So when they fill out the needs assessment, there are specific questions around what is it that your building needs to be successful and for students to make gains on state assessments or other assessments for that matter. But ultimately, we come to work every day for student achievement, right? Whether it's a building needs assessment, whether it's our strategic plan, it's all the same. We're here for kids and we want to do what's best for kids and their learning. And so absolutely building assessment is tied to student achievement.
All right. And so as we're thinking about the next cycle of the strategic plan and the relation to the budget, it would be helpful maybe then to listen for where the strategic plan is going in terms of moving forward with its current path, maybe kind of taking next level iterations on some of our goals, or if there's going to be kind of a new component to that, then we need to maybe think about that in terms of budgeting priorities.
So a couple things. I want to take us back to the steering committee where we provided a significant data notebook for them to consider. So it's not just state assessments, but state assessments, absenteeism, other assessments were in there. Somebody help me. What am I missing? Discipline data was in there. So all of the data that we would traditionally collect to say, are our students achieving? So there's that piece. So that's our number one goal. And we really challenged our action teams to not create stuff. I like to use the word stuff. Like, we come up with these great ideas, and I'm not saying they're not great. Most of them are. But how do they impact learning and how do they impact kids? Because it's easy to get activities on there where we can check the box and we're like, oh, we have this great handbook. That's only great if it impacts instruction in the classroom and ultimately impacts student achievement. So we really coach those teams to think about what action steps have the biggest impact on kids. So once we get through that process and they have action plans in place, and all of our 6 action teams have 2 to 3 action plans. In addition to that action plan, they have to have what we're calling a cost-benefit analysis. So they have this action step that says we need da-da-da-da-da-da. Then they have to complete the cost-benefit analysis. It says, how is this cost benefiting? What's the return on our investment? Is there a big enough return on the investment? And so all of the action teams will have a cost-benefit analysis with their plans that they will submit to the steering committee. So they will have that. You all will have that too, June 24th, when the entire plan comes to you. And then it's going to take some time to look at all of those and say which is the best return on our investment for our kids. And I would say it's probably highly likely we can't do everything the 6 strategies want to do. So we're going to have to really take a good hard look at that and say, what's the best return on investment? Dr. Schumacher, Dr. Neal, anything you guys want to add to that?
We also asked them to put in any kind of professional development needs, professional learning needs included in there, and also challenge them when the leaders come together to look for synergies and connections across those strategies where we might be able to optimize investment or optimize time.
Ms. Borgman.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. On the $1 million for classified staff, how much does that take the hourly pay up to?
Well, it depends on how you're going to apply it, but just on the base costs, if you were to spread it on the whole schedule, based on the classified cost for a 1% on a base, it'd be about 2.5%.
Okay. Does that put us fairly competitive then, in line, I guess, with neighboring districts? Or are
Yeah,
we still behind, or?
Dr. Schumacher might add to this, but yes, it would make us very competitive with our surrounding school district. I think we still have a ways to go to compete with the private sector, the Targets and the Walmart.
Yeah, I also want to be careful about answering that question because we haven't finished negotiations with our teachers, and so we won't finalize that until after our negotiations. So it would be, that million would be above and beyond what that negotiated rate would be. But I think it's fair to say that we feel like we can compete really well with our school neighbors. We still are probably behind the actual market.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Ms. Ousley?
Even if the current tax bill is vetoed, which I think everyone is predicting, that property tax reduction or exemption for that, from moving it from 40,000 to 100,000, I think I caught that you said that we wouldn't know exactly how that played out, but are there no runs on how that would impact us as a district, or were there and they just haven't been provided to us, or?
The 20 mills is collected locally, but it's sent directly to the state, so it doesn't run through our budget anymore. And I believe, I thought there was they put a clause in the bill that whatever reduction that causes in state aid or taxes collected, that they would transfer from
General fund.
general fund
Okay,
to make it whole, to make it even.
okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so it won't impact us directly.
Okay, good to
It'd be
know.
more at the state level.
All right, because I imagine that that'll come back, and for some reason I had not keyed into that previously, so just had a little, I'll go back to breathing, thank you.
Mr. Westbrook?
I had a question as a follow-up to that. So the assessed value of property in the county will continue to go up. Does that have a salutary impact on how this formula, as we've discussed it this evening, would impact our budgets?
For operating funds, the assessed valuation goes up. It helps the mill levy directly.
Yeah.
So general fund and LOB is all based on the school finance formula. So it tells you how much budget authority you have to spend, and then you back into your mill levies to raise the revenue to cover that budget authority. So if assessed valuation goes up, then your mill levy would go down.
So now I want to ask ask a question that I'm going to pretend is to help the people riveted to their TV screens watching this this meeting, but it's really for my edification. And the local operating budget is an assessment that is discretionary by each school board across the state. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And if we didn't use that LOB option, how many mills would go away from our budget?
Approximately 15 mills.
And at current levels, how would that affect my taxes on the houses that you've talked about to illustrate your performance, your presentation tonight?
I probably can't answer that.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but...
It'd be a considerable amount.
Okay.
Our LOB raises like $70 million for us.
Are there school districts across the state that have chosen not to use their LOB or to use it very slightly?
They're mandated 15.
We're mandated to.
Well, yeah, there's a 15 mil mandate for every district. Right?
And we can go to 20.
33.
33.
33%.
Okay. 33.
30, right, 15%, sorry, not mil, 15%.
Okay, 15, okay. Well, the reason I raise these questions because I think the inelegance of our school finance formula it contributes to the complexity, which makes it very difficult to understand it, particularly with all the acronyms, CPI, LOB, COLA, all the other terms of art that are used. My question, though, has to do with the local option budget. Years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States was asked to consider school finance, and while the court agreed that the opportunities for education should not depend on the wealth of a community in which a child resides, that the United States Constitution defines education as the responsibility of the state. So good news and bad news goes back to the state. Does the LOB constitute a sort of way of giving local districts the opportunity to enrich the monies that will be put into their education programs as opposed to other options that might be issued by other districts throughout the state?
Well, the LOB was, I think, intended to be an opportunity for districts to go above and beyond the state requirement. The equity portion of the equalization aid that the state contributes to districts' LOB, local, the local authority that they use is what equalizes that. So in a community of less wealth, the state would fill in the gap of what could be raised across another district that might be more wealthy, like the community we live in.
I get it. Okay. Well,
And that's why the cap is there too.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Well, the discussion is helpful because I think those of us who are new to the board and have some history with the district for a long time, but are new to the board, struggle with the reality of the constraints of school finance and how much we want to secure more funds for better education in Shawnee Mission to make a good school system even better. But it's really a struggle to find legitimate ways to create that funding without getting us lopsided with the way funding takes place across the state. So forgive us for struggling. I say us, I want to bring Mario into my tent here, but forgive us for being naive. But through asking those innocent questions, maybe we can stimulate some more innovative thinking that can get us in the proactive, as I talked about earlier.
Ms. Osley?
So I just want to follow up on the mill levy issue with your questions regarding the mill levy. I believe, and Mr. Knapp can correct me if I'm inaccurate, but I believe we have the lowest mill levy in Johnson County by a somewhat significant amount. So we are getting some bang for our buck in Shawnee Mission. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I'll defer to Mr. Knapp if he does. If he doesn't, that's fine, because I wasn't anticipating referencing this, even though I do like this particular topic.
Yeah, you're correct. We do have the lowest in Johnson County of the 6 school districts.
Do you know what that, like, say that our next competitor is? It was recent, and it's not necessarily that it's a competition, but just to the topic of mill levy and with what our taxpayers are paying. And no problems, we can find it later, that's fine, but just for the conversation.
Yeah, I presented that slide in the April workshop.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? I just had 2 quick ones. On the pie chart that looks at the anticipated operating expenditures, the line for administrators, does that include the building? So all of our principals across all our elementary and secondary schools are embedded in that number as well. And then just thinking about the balance of the different funds, our federal dollars that you're anticipating coming in through the different title programs remaining flat, is that another way of kind of thinking that it actually is reducing our purchasing power there because the federal funds are not really keeping up with inflation?
Well, Title I is our main one because that supports our Title I schools. So when we stay flat there, we do raises, and so raises comes out of that increase funding. So we always have to tweak the budget in the Title I. So yeah, you do lose your purchasing power if it stays flat like that, because you're always going to have your raises each year.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Owsley, the closest person to us is Blue Valley, and they're 2.9 mils higher than we are.
All right. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Hubbard, did you have anything else you wanted to? I do not. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knapp. All right, we have a number of consent items, about 30. It would bring us from item 4.1 to 6.1. If I could seek a motion to approve.
So moved, Owsley.
All right.
Second, Westbrook.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Yes, Ms. Borgman.
Can we pull an item from consent? Is there?
Yes. Yes. I probably didn't finish my sentence, unless anyone would like to pull an item from consent.
Yeah, I would like to pull item 5.04 donations from consent.
All right, I would need a second on that.
So moved.
All right, and so then we would need to take a vote. Where is Sarah Goodburn when you need her? I believe we need to take a vote on whether or not to pull that consent item. Is that, I'm going to look.
I understand that any consent item can be pulled.
We don't need a first, second, or
We don't need a vote.
motion? Okay, all right. So let's pull that item, and let's go back to items, looking for consent, approval for consent for items 4.1 to 6.1 with the exclusion of the donation items 5.4. Do I have a second on that?
Second, Hembry.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Clarification, who was our motion on that? Who was the first?
Who was our first on that?
Well, I was the initial.
Original.
I was the initial motion for.
We did it again, though. Okay, all right. Okay, now let's take consent item 5.4. And so we have, I need a motion to approve and second, if there is a second, and then we can go to discussion.
Move
Okay.
to approve, Borgman.
All right, second?
Second, Westbrook.
Okay, all right, discussion.
So I just want to point out, once again, I know this was brought up by another board member on donations. 80% of the $180,000 worth of donations are going to one feeder pattern. And, you know, this is something that, again, has been brought up previously. And I truly believe this is something that we need to address as a board. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if there's some policy advice that we can get from KSB. I don't know what that looks like moving forward. But, I mean, the funding disparity is definitely there. And for a public school system we're continually put in this place that, you know, we consistently are voting on approving these donations with a large percentage that consistently go to one feeder pattern. And again, the funding disparity just is very evident to me. And so I don't know what it looks like moving forward, but I just think, for me personally, in good conscience and good faith, I can't continue to approve all of these lopsided donations to one feeder pattern.
I'd like to weigh in on that. I share that concern, and I know we should be careful as we express it, that we don't invite any kind of dispirited attitude from constituents who benefit from this. But I don't think it's consistent philosophically for us to have that disparity in our own school district while we are arguing at the state level that we should be able to fund our kids' education more than the state permits us to. It's one of those terrible paradoxes that we face. But I do think we need to face up to this sooner rather than later, because at some point that disparity is going to create ill will inside our school district, and it could lead to litigation that is really unnecessary and distracting.
Any other comments?
I've spoken on this before. I would just say that I agree with Ms. Borgman. This comes up consistently, and it never sits well for me.
So one avenue we have available to us is to set up that kind of ad hoc kind of task force. To me, would be a logical step. If that's something that this board would want to do, we could set up a time-limited task force of 3 board members to take a look at the issue and make some conversation and recommendations. That would be one option to pursue. And I believe that would just take, that I think would require kind of board approval. So, right, a motion and approval to pursue that. Just some other kind of thoughts and perspectives. Just to add contextually to that, in thinking about some of those uses, we would need to, and I'm sure, I'm not trying to imply that we would dictate how SMAC or how PTAs allocate their funds. It would be more about maybe how the district might interact with those donations. The board obviously has no authority over PTA and how they allocate their budget. I think it is important to note that there are a number of things in some of those donations. There's a very large portion of that goes to the SHARE program, which is actually used to provide community service throughout the Shawnee Mission community. So like one big chunk of those funds that is donated is actually a donation that goes towards the community service provided by all the students in that high school that they turn outwards to the community. I just feel it's important to kind of share that. And then also my understanding is that the Caring for Kids program that supports our schools across the district, that this one feeder pattern does not tap into those volunteer services precisely for, I think, for some of those concerns that you've come up, that you've identified, that there are maybe some financial ways and other support programs that can be put in place. So the Caring for Kids program typically does not involve any of those schools in that pattern and leaves those resources for the rest of the district. So I think there's some, it's a complex issue, but it's one worth maybe discussing and pursuing. And I know, Jessica, when you were serving as SMAC PTA chair, you worked, or liaison, I think you had conversations with SMAC about how to look into some of those sharing, so it might be interesting to learn more about that and how that played out. So those are my thoughts. I don't know what the rest of you, if anyone has any reaction to that.
Well, I would certainly favor a task force and would be happy to volunteer to participate if one is created. I think we can resolve this issue for all sorts of good reasons and can resolve it favorably for everyone.
Yeah, I think, thank you. Thank you for some options and some, a perspective on the issue. And I thank you to all of the people and organizations that have donated to our district. Certainly, those donations are very much appreciated. It just, again, it just, for years, hasn't sat well. And I think, we've just had other things to deal with COVID and strategic planning and all the things. And so I think this is a good time to, while we are tackling a new strategic plan, this might fit somewhat parallel to that. I don't know, but all I know is this is an issue that is not new, and it's one that, every board meeting just feels very inequitable. And so I welcome any kind of a task force as a first step where we can look into some best practices. I believe, Ms. Hembry, you had said that other school districts were the only school district that just allows at-will donations. Most other districts.
We're the only one that allows personnel to be paid for by PTA groups in particular. I think we really stand out in that regard in particular.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe a next step would be is if any board members want to draft what that task force would look like, put some parameters around it, what its mission would be, and then, I don't know, submit that to you, Dr. Hubbard, and then bring that back to the next meeting to consider for action?
If we're going to use the word task force, I think this is a board issue, because task force is specifically associated with the board. And I think in addition to those parameters, you would need to define, task force can be just board members, or it can be, you can have patrons part of that. So you would need to define whether you're going to have just a board task force or if you're going to include other parties. So I think, you could submit it to me and then I could share it with board leadership.
My thought process that it would be, and thank you for that clarification on language, because I was just making some assumptions. So I was assuming we were looking at a board task force of not a board committee, so a board task force. So that would be 3 members, I think.
And I might be, I believe a board task force can be either by policy. I would need to clarify that for sure, but I believe it can be either. It can be just board members or not, it doesn't change to committee, I
A board
don't
task
believe.
force of just, yeah, I get what you're saying. A task force, not a district-wide task force.
You're saying it would just
a
have
board
3
task force of
board
3
members.
board members.
You guys, Brad Stratton is watching this at home right now.
Just cringing,
and
right?
just really wanting to
Read the
send us an
policy
email.
is what he's saying.
He's like, where's the call-in line?
He's not paying attention. I think the last task force we had, there were 3 board members assigned to the task force, but staff helped to provide information and resources for the people on the task force because it's a limited
And
window.
I think that's a far less cumbersome way of arranging it. We can rely on administration and other sources to give us information. But if we have, 10 people on the task force, then we have all the meetings that have to be coordinated and the schedules, and it's protracted. I think we can do this more efficiently.
So
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I appreciate the recommendation and suggestion of starting with a 3-person task force to kind of take a first step. What does this look like? How does this land? It's certainly, and then, the task force could present it to the board, get feedback, input, and then we can decide what is step number 2. Does that sound like a fair?
So, yeah, so just for clarification, I would say step 1 would be a description of what the task force will do.
The goal.
Right, and maybe submit that, and then we can look at that maybe at agenda review.
Okay, I'm
And
happy.
bring that back and work that into a board agenda.
I am happy to submit that.
Okay.
And take the lead on that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. So then, do we need a?
We need to take action.
So
we
I
need to
move
vote.
to approve, or we need to?
We need to
vote
vote
that?
on item 5.4.
So I
we-
move to approve item 5.04.
I think we've already have a motion
We
and
have
a
a first and
second.
second, so we need to vote.
Okay.
So all in favor of the donation item 5.4, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, great. All right, that brings us to, we have 7, anyone need to take a break or stretch their legs? We have 7 action items. The first 3, the last 4 through 7 are related to the SRO contracts, but let's start with item 7.1, approval of gun violence awareness proclamation. And I am going to ask Ms. Boyd-Nerona to read that proclamation.
Declaring June 2024 to be National Gun Violence Awareness Month. This proclamation declares the month of June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Month in the Shawnee Mission School District to promote gun safety and to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence. Whereas June is National Gun Violence Awareness Month, and whereas an estimated 4.6 million United States children live in households with at least one loaded, unlocked firearm, and whereas guns are a leading cause of death among children and teens in Kansas, whereas every year in the United States, nearly 350 children under the age of 18 unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else, roughly 1 per day. And whereas every year in the United States, another 590 children die by gun suicide, most often using guns belonging to a family member. And over the past decade, the firearm suicide rate among children and teens has increased 59%. And whereas regarding incidents of gun violence on school grounds, 76% of shooters under the age of 18 obtain their guns from their own home or the home of a relative or friend. And whereas the Shawnee Mission School District supports policies and funding that maintain and strengthen district capacity to provide a healthy and safe learning environment, And whereas the legislative platform of the Shawnee Mission School District supports efforts to keep our schools, students, and staff safe from gun violence, and whereas the district supports threat assessment programs in schools, security upgrades, effective emergency planning, responsible firearm storage, among other safety measures. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Shawnee Mission School Board declares the month of June 2024 to be National Gun Violence Awareness Month. We remind our community that the district will continue to provide gun locks free of charge to community members, and we encourage all community members to store their guns safely, securely, and out of reach of children.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Owsley.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for that, Ms. Boyd-Norena. Our second action item, 7.2, is approval of the use of federal ESSER funds to provide one-time retention payments. Dr. Hubbard.
So I'm making a recommendation for the use of federal ESSER 3 funds to provide a one-time $1,400 retention payment on or near September 20th, 2024 to all qualifying SMSD employees. The estimated cost is around $4.5 million. I want to just reiterate that this is our 4th year in a row for the ESSER retention payment and final. It's been really amazing that we have been able to do this for our employees, and I feel very fortunate that we have been able to, but I also need to be really clear, ESSER funds are gone, and this will be the final retention payment.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval, Hembry.
Second?
Second, Boyd-Norena.
Well, do we need discussion?
Is this the last one, Michelle?
The final.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7.3, approval of contractor for turf installation and field upgrades at 3 and 2.
I'm going to ask Dr. Gilhouse to give an update here.
So this is exciting because we currently are the only district with our neighbors all have turf baseball fields. And so we are looking at the addition of 3 turf fields where we play our home games at 3 and 2 Stadium, the Lenexa Complex on fields 1, 2, and 7. This will also consist of turf running down the left and right field line to meet the needs of bullpens as well as batting cages to warm up on. This will also provide for new netting backstop around the fields as well. So this is turf in the infields only. Can't recall a game being rained out because of wet grass. So this would be a wonderful addition to our district that they would begin construction on September 3rd, and they would be done by March 1st, and we would be ready to begin the baseball season for 24-25 next year and have turf on all of our game fields. I know there's still concerns about turf on practice fields. I would love to have turf on the practice fields as well, and who knows, maybe that will be coming to a school near you soon. So, but as of right now, I get that is also a wish list.
All right, well, given how landlocked we are, I appreciate the collaborative relationship with 3 and 2 and then our capacity to try to
Correct.
keep up, so.
Okay, and we're still looking. We'll keep looking for a ground for a new complex someday.
All right, do we have a motion to approve? Second?
Second, Hembry.
Any discussion? Ms. Borgman?
Dr. Gilhouse, thank you. So a couple questions on this. So since it's at 3 and 2, obviously in the summer, like Summer League, it's not just Shawnee Mission that's benefiting from it, like.
It is just Shawnee Mission that benefits from through March through May. So those are our fields for the baseball season. So part of that contract is that, yes, there would be other programs or tournaments or league games that would play on that. Our contract with 3 and 2 does allow them to, they would provide the maintenance on it and continue to keep the upkeep on it. We'll also add to, we've got some of our O&M people that would also add to the dugouts and some aesthetics to it as well. I think 3 and 2 has made a commitment that they're looking at investing some money in maybe some other turf fields as well as some upgrades to their facilities. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole and speak for them, but I think they have a commitment as well. So we've had a contract with them since the 90s. Spoke with legal counsel. A lot of concerns where it was tied in for this extreme amount of time. You know, the contract can be broken at some point in time as long as we give enough notice. But they have been a good partner of ours. We're excited for the turf coming in next year. And again, we continue to look for area, but we are pretty landlocked to build a brand new complex with at least 2 or 3 fields on it.
What kind of feedback from athletic directors and vested community members have you gotten from?
I've talked to a lot of concerned patrons, and I know Mr. Glacier is in the audience as well, who works with the athletic directors daily. They've expressed concerns, and everyone that I have shared with what our goals are pending board approval have been over the moon, very, very happy, very, very excited, and looking at the next steps of possible practice fields in the near future.
Okay, so thumbs up from the ADs.
Yes, very much so. For everything I have heard, like I said, I don't want to talk to, I know that he talks to them every day, but yes, the athletic directors are very excited about it as well.
Booster clubs, I mean, I
Booster
just want to
clubs,
make sure
everybody.
that-
I have
okay.
not heard one negative word, and that does not happen very often.
Okay, okay. All right, I know this has been a, does Mr. Glacier?
Do you want to comment on the athletic director's opinions or feelings?
Yeah, I'll add to that. What has been brought up over the last few seasons is where we are behind on that. We have more concerns from our ADs and the ability to play out there, while all of our neighbors and the state of Kansas in the activities association has increased the number of games. Now they can play 26. Well, now it's important that we get those games in, but when rain delays, everything else occurs, that's putting some of our athletic programs at a disadvantage. Our athletic directors and coaches were looking at taking our games elsewhere, which means we would be going and renting other fields, taking our fans and our families potentially out of our neighborhoods. So because of where those games are played. So our ADs are excited about that, and I know that it would be a very welcome change to have turf on those fields.
Well, great. Okay, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah, thank you.
And I loved, Joe, hearing you say that there was some movement toward turf at the high schools. I've definitely had a couple calls in the last couple of years of parents who were concerned that their child didn't have access to a turf field at South to practice at. And I think there's, again, some inconsistency around that between different high schools in the district.
That is correct.
All right. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. I think it's time to vote. We've had a first and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we have 4 more action items, 7.4 to 7.7. These are all 4 SRO contracts. Can we take them all at once?
I think you need to vote on them individually, but I'd like to talk about them all at once, if I could do that. So these aren't always on action. A lot of times they'll be in consent, but I thought it was important to put them in action, mainly because the SRO contracts with all the cities that provide SROs have increased from $29 an hour to $38 per hour. And just a reminder, that's half. That's our half. The city pays the other half of that salary. The decision to increase this amount was in an agreement with all of the agencies that provide police officers to Shawnee Mission, as well as other districts in Johnson County. This increase is the first increase in several years and reflects the fact of the nationwide shortage of police officers and the dramatic increase in the cost to hire police officers. The starting salaries for police officers have increased dramatically in the last 5 to 7 years as a result of this shortage. This is very true in Johnson County, and this rate increase does not cover the full cost of a police officer on the job today. So the Lenexa contract is a total of $52,896. The Shawnee contract, a total of $105,792. Overland Park, which would be an action item, would be $264,480. or historically would be, but tonight they all are. Prairie Village, 105,792. So I'm recommending that we approve all 4 city contracts for our SROs.
Okay. So let's start with 7.4, approval of SRO contract with the city of Lenexa. Do I have a motion to approve?
Could I ask Dr. Hubbard a question about?
Can we do a first and a second?
Yeah, we need a motion and a second, and then I will.
Yeah.
And then we
take it.
can go to
Sure, yes.
discussion? Okay,
So
great.
moved, Boyd and Arona.
Thank you.
Second, Borgman.
Okay, Ms. Borgman.
So why is there a disparity then between like the city of Lenexa at 52 and OP at 264?
Great question, and that's because of the number of schools that we may have in that particular jurisdiction. And Overland Park is our largest. We have the most officers associated with Overland Park schools.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 7.5, approval of SRO contract with the city of Shawnee. Do I have a
Move
motion?
approval, Borgman.
All right,
Second, Hembry.
All right. And discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Approval of SRO contract for the city of Overland Park, first and second.
So moved, Owsley.
Second, Westbrook.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And 7.7, approval of SRO contract with the city of Prairie Village. Motion to approve?
So moved, Owsley.
All right, second.
Second, Boyd and Arona.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. This brings us to board comments, item 8.1. I'm going to look to my left first. Mr. Westbrook?
Well, I really was coincidentally delighted to have a new encounter with Grace Hobson tonight. I worked with Grace years ago when she was a reporter for the Kansas City Star, and I thought her remarks on cell phones, smartphones specifically, were right on target. I think we as a school board need to deal with the issue. And I know we've taken an important first step in the student handbook guidance that's there, but I believe that smartphones are both a nemesis and an extraordinary instrument that can be a partner in education. But if they are abused, I think they can be very dangerous to our kids. If they are not abused, I think they can be very helpful. The book Grace referred to, The Anxious Generation, is a book that I have ordered for school board colleagues, and I'll gift that to you guys. And I know full well you're going to download it into your phone and never pick up the book, but I'm an old-timer who likes real books. So I'm going to encourage my colleagues to read that book, and I am going to encourage us to get to a point where we can make a firm decision about the use of smartphones in the schools in a way that will be helpful to the mental health and the education of our kids.
All right. Anyone else have, Ms. Ousley?
Just, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Graduation's next week. I mean, that's the whole deal. That's the whole reason. I mean, I keep coming back. I know everybody's here for the kids, but the warm fuzzies are at graduation and getting to have them walk across the stage and go off into the universe. So really looking forward to seeing everybody at graduations next week, and congratulations to all our graduates. It was senior night at one of the band concerts I went to the other night, and listening to the band director talk about everything that this class has been through, just as everything that the class of 23 had been through. Like, these kids are already probably more resilient and competent than a lot of people of our age. So they've been through a lot. They've weathered a lot. They had to hike up a lot of hills in the snow both ways to get to their graduation. So super proud of this graduating class and can't wait to see them next week.
Great. Anyone else have board comments? Ms. Borgman?
Ms. Hembry, you brought up a good question about KASB and making sure that, if we're going to, during the whole school finance discussion, making sure that we feel comfortable with KASB's message and advocacy. And I think that's a great point. And so I will make sure that I'm actually having lunch with Dr. Jordan next week. And so I will bring that up and make sure that we feel comfortable with that, answer and his position on that. So I do appreciate you raising that. And as Ms. Ousley mentioned, it's a graduation time, and I have a son who's graduating, and it's a very special class from Shawnee Mission Northwest, as all of the Shawnee Mission area high schools, and so it's just, it's a bittersweet time, more sweet for the teachers, I think, and for parents of, graduating students. Well, I guess it's bittersweet too. So I just wish them all the best. And it's also a big week for sub-state in sports. Shawnee Mission Northwest and Shawnee Mission East play girls soccer tomorrow. And I always hate it when Shawnee Mission schools go head-to-head in a sub-state game, because I always like to see Shawnee Mission schools, in the finals. But anyway, I will have on my orange and black, but I'm always cheering for Shawnee Mission schools, regardless of the sport. I know tennis has some exceptional players, men's tennis, and just all the sports. So best of luck to all those student athletes out there. I know it's a lot juggling finals and sports, and so, enjoy this moment, and it's been a great year.
That's great. Just to tag on to that, the messaging around anything that would be advocacy related through KASB would come out of the legislative arm, Leah Fleiter and Shannon Kimball, and Heather Ousley is our voice for that on the legislative committee, so that would be a very direct avenue as we kind of approach the 2027 legislative session and everything that comes up with that. We do have also representation through that directly through the board. Just want to add that piece.
I think that's a good point, and also, just from a very high level, good to be mindful and intentional, and, just make sure that from a high level, not getting granular, but making sure that it's, what's the overall objective, I guess, is a good place to start, and what's the overall way that we lean into this, making sure that, all schools are, represented and have a seat at the table. And so I think
Speaks to the importance of
I'm
our
gonna throw it out there.
legislative platforms at the district
Absolutely.
level and the associations level. Yeah? Okay, any other board comments?
I'd just like to take a brief moment to thank Mr. Westbrook for highlighting Grace Hobson's comments during the public portion of our meeting. I really appreciate that. For whatever reason, that is the question I get 4 times as many as any other from teachers and parents and students, is about cell phones inside of our buildings. And I think there's a real sentiment that it's whatever note we're hitting right now is not quite the one that our students need. So I'm really grateful for that issue being elevated. Thank you.
And just wanted to briefly share my deepest gratitude. Now that we're on the back end of Teacher Appreciation Week, my gratitude for teachers and educators across not only our district, but across the state and across the world. There's I don't know if it's still there, but when I would visit my mom at Neiman Elementary, in the staff restroom, there was a poster, I think, drawn by maybe a kiddo or somebody that said, "You're fulfilling the universe's greatest calling." And I think it just sits in that room, and I think it's really special. But I think about it all the time when I am interacting with parents and PTA members and students who love and care and appreciate their teachers, and I just love that idea. So happy that hopefully last week was great for all of our teachers and educators. I got to watch a lot of PTAs work diligently to care for those teachers in our buildings, and I thought that was very special. So just wanted to celebrate them one last time at our board meeting tonight.
Thank you. All right, are we good? Okay. All right, we have our item 9.
Dr. Sinclair,
Oh,
real
yeah.
quickly, before we move, can we build in at least a 5-minute break?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, yes, okay, so we have, we need to approve executive session for negotiations, but so we'll build in a 5-minute break, but also how much time do you think we should have? Let's start with 15, okay. So I'm going to look to Ms. Boyd-Nerona to read that motion. And you can round, make it 7 minutes, whatever, however. get us to even numbers?
So I'm thinking 9:22. Okay, so I move that the board recess into executive session to discuss negotiations pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under COMA, and that the board will reconvene in this room about 9:22.
Let's make it 9:25.
25 p.m. The board invites Dr. Hubbard, Dr. Gillhouse, Dr. Schumacher, David Smith, Russell Knapp, and Rachel England to join us.
All right, so do I have a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. And we're going to convene in 5 minutes, so at 9:08.